Welcome to my channel. Support our channel by subscribing. Your subscription helps us grow and create more intriguing content like this. Now, let's dive into today's story. This story starts off in 2015 when my wife, Maria, and I were both 44 and 45. Until this point, we were both happily married for 18 years, with 2 amazing sons. We were both very much in love, at least I thought. Our sex life wasn't brilliant, but we had other ways of showing affection. We had also never ever had any rough periods in our marriage at all. I myself am self-employed as a plumber, and I've been doing this business since around 2009 or 10, and at the time Maria was a pharmacist. And we were both going strong in our careers and were both earning a decent amount. One night when our sons were in bed, me and Maria were downstairs and we decided to watch a film together on Netflix. We started watching this film about how a poor girl who had been in poverty her whole life then joined an escorting agency. This girl mentioned in the film how she was earning around $1,000 per client. When the girl said this, Maria's response was, "There's me spending hours a day in a pharmacy earning the same amount a year as she does in a month." When she said this, I didn't think anything of it and just replied with, "Yeah." After that, we enjoyed the film, and once it ended, we went to sleep. After that evening, our life was completely normal until about 1 month later. It was just another usual workday, and I came home at around 3 p.m. after finishing a job I had and picking up the kids from school, who were both 7. And at around 5 p.m., I got a text from Maria saying that she was going for a drink with her friend after work for a while to catch up, which I said was fine, so I fed the kids and put them to sleep. I was just watching football on TV and hadn't even realized the time when my wife came home at around 8 p.m. I presumed she must have just been having a good time with her friend, so I didn't question her about anything apart from asking her how it went. Straight after that, though, she went up and had a shower, which was strange as ever since we met. She has always been a morning shower person. I didn't think anything of this, so later on we both went to sleep as usual. Fast forward to the weekend, Maria said she was going out to the town center for shopping as she hadn't been in ages. I offered to drop her off, but she politely said she would take her car, so she went, and I stayed home and did household jobs. Maria had been gone for 4 hours and I hadn't heard from her, so I rang her up to see when she was going to be back, but she didn't answer. So I texted her asking when she's back. She didn't read it, so I then waited roughly half an hour and rang her again, and she didn't pick up. At this point, I started to get a bit worried. I tired ringing her again and again for around 45 minutes, but she didn't pick up. Then eventually, after being out for a total of 7 hours, she rang me up and said she was really sorry that she hadn't answered. She claimed that her phone was out of power and had to find and sit somewhere for it to charge. I believed her and forgave her, and when she came home we hugged and we said the usual, "I love you" to each other. Maria then went to the shower. At this point, I still hadn't suspected a single thing. I suspected nothing of her for a whole 3 months after that, and life then went on. During this 3 months, there were a few occasions when she would meet up with a friend, and I just let her go. Then there were also a few times where she would work late, and she would say she's at the pharmacy till the shop closes or something like that, and I would believe her. She also started working a lot. More frequently on Sundays. She did this sometimes anyway, but in this time period she was doing it a lot more than usual. I also continued working like normal throughout this time. Then one Friday, Maria came home from the pharmacy and said that she had been invited to spend the night at her friend's house. I thought this was a little weird, as this friend she was staying at usually met with Maria a lot of the time anyway, so I wondered why Maria wants to stay over at her house all of a sudden. So I just agreed with her and offered to drop her off, but she said she'll just drive. So after she went that evening, it was just me and the boys. They were just playing on their own, and I was getting a little bored. So then I decided that I could ask Maria's friend's husband, Dean, if he wants to come over for a pint, as us two were quite good friends. I then proceed to ring Dean up and I asked him, whilst the ladies gossip at your house, if you want to come over to mine for a pint. He just replied with, "What do you mean? My wife is at home only with me." It was at that moment my heart dropped. I then asked him if he was just joking, and he was being dead serious. I could even hear his wife in the background saying it was only them two at home. I then ended the phone and just stood up and thought for a moment. I decided to ring up Maria, but she didn't reply. I rang her 3 more times after that, but she didn't answer. I also texted her about 10 times, asking if she is okay, and she didn't reply. I then put the kids to bed and was considering calling the police until I got a call from Maria saying that she was very, very sorry for making you worry so much. She said over the phone that she meant she was going to see her other friend and said the wrong name by accident and didn't answer the phone as they went for dinner. I then felt really relieved, but told her to keep her phone on. After saying goodnight to her, I went to sleep myself and kept thinking to myself, at least she's all right. But one thing kept troubling me was that, why was she at dinner for such a long time? I then stopped thinking and went to sleep. Then the next day, at around 1 p.m., Maria arrived home and she acted completely normal. I asked her how it was, and all she told me was that her and her friend just relaxed, chatted, and had a meal. We then went on as usual for a week until I got home one day, and the postman came to deliver a parcel to our house which was addressed to Maria. She hardly ever orders things, so I waited until she came home to give it to her. She said, "Oh, that must be my new phone." When she said that, my jaw dropped, and I answered, "But you already got a new phone a few months ago, which I got you?" She then says, "Oh yeah, but I wanted a bigger one, so I bought myself a new one." Despite feeling a little down and confused why she bought a new phone, iPhone 6 Plus at the time, I let it be. Fast forward 2 days later, she comes home from work with a brand new hair curler and hair dryer, which she bought after work. And they were a really expensive brand too. I asked her why she is spending and essentially wasting so much money on things she already has. Her reply was, "Oh, I never buy myself nice new things, so thought I would treat myself." This wasn't like her, but I just again let it go. Although it was bothering me, bearing in mind her birthday was in 6 weeks, and I could have got her the gifts. Fast forward about another week, we are just sat at our dinner table with the boys chatting as usual as we ate when I saw Maria wearing a brand new spanking clean Pandora bracelet with a few fancy gems on it. I asked her when she got it. She said, "Oh yeah, I forgot to tell you. I bought a new bracelet. Do you like it?" I responded with, "It's lovely, but why are you spending so much money all of a sudden on things which aren't necessary? It's your birthday in just over a month." This clearly bothered her, that I was questioning her, and she said to me in a slightly angry voice, "Come on, I never buy myself things, and I just really wanted it, and for my birthday I don't want any gifts from you. All I want is to spend time with you." After this, we ate in silence, as we didn't want to argue in front of the kids. However, that had made me reach a tipping point, and I did have a strange feeling in my head. Before we went to sleep that night, I said to Maria, "I'm really glad that you're buying these lovely things and enjoying them, but please be careful with what you spend." She then said, "Sorry," and she'll be careful from now. After that, we kissed and went to sleep. That feeling in my head had calmed down now, but I still had questions. Where is she getting this spare money from? 3 more weeks pass, 2 in 3 days actually, and one Saturday night Maria says she's going out with her boss, who is a woman, and another colleague, who is also a woman, for a drink to a bar. I spend the next few hours at home with the kids. Then here's where things get very interesting. At around 9 p.m., I get a phone call from one of my friends who I haven't spoke to for a few weeks, so I wondered why he was calling. I picked the phone up, and he tells me that he is at a pub and has seen my wife sat with a man about the same age as me, and that she is dressed up in a very revealing dress, and that he saw Maria and the man kiss a few times. When he said, my heart dropped, and I was silent for a good 10 seconds. I replied with, "Excuse me?" He says, "Mate, I'm being serious. I just was walking back from the bathroom and saw them sat together at a table. I haven't said anything to them." When he said this, I thought he was just making it up, so asked him to send a picture. But at the same time, I was thinking, how do I know if she really went with her work colleagues? My friend then sent me a picture. It was a bit far away as he didn't want to get caught taking the picture, but I zoomed in on it, and my jaw dropped and heart sank. That woman was definitely Maria. She was sat with another man, and she was wearing such a low-cut dress that almost her entire 2 breasts were sticking out in the open. I didn't even know she had a dress like that. Almost her entire 2 breasts were sticking out in the open. I didn't even know she had a dress like that. But that wasn't on my mind. I started shaking and almost tearing up. I asked my friend to tell me the address of the pub they were at, so I ran to the car, leaving the boys at home, and drove half an hour as fast as possible to the pub. I parked up and my mate was waiting outside for me. We both went in quickly and pointed me towards Maria. I then looked at where he was pointing and completely froze. There she was. My wife of 18 years sat there laughing and giggling with a random man. All I could think of at this time in my head was, oh my gosh, she is cheating on me. She was wearing beautiful makeup. She never looked like that with me. Her new Pandora, red heels, and a dress which certainly gave the world a brilliant view of her very large breasts. Maria was the best-dressed person in the whole bar. I just stood there staring at her. I then walked up to her and rubbed her shoulder. Maria turned and looked at me. Her face went from all happy and smiley to a face of horror. I said, "Maria, what on earth are you doing here? And who is this man?" She stands up and puts her hands on my arms and says, "Honey, it's just a work colleague meeting. Don't raise your voice." After she said that, I then said, "Wearing a dress like that? Not a chance, you're coming with me." So I picked her bag up and started walking out the bar with Maria following me as she talked some random gibberish. During this time, the guy she was with was completely silent. We both sat in the car and Maria instantly burst out crying and sobbing. In a calm voice, I say to her, "Now please tell me, Maria, who that man was? And how long has this been going on between you two?" Still sobbing her eyes out, she's replied with, "No, we don't have a relationship and we are not dating. This was our first time meeting." I say, "Then who was he? And why are you wearing such a sexy dress?" Maria then goes on to tell me that for the past few months, she has been working for a high-class escorting agency and that she quit her job as a pharmacist then too. All those times she has been coming home late, meeting a friend. She was really spending the time with a client. All the hours during the day I was made to believe she spent at the pharmacy. She was really with clients all that time. She claimed that she just earned so much money from the first week of doing it that she quit her real job and did escorting full-time. She didn't want to tell me as she knew I wouldn't allow it. This all explains why she was suddenly buying all these relatively expensive items. She told me she got the idea when we watched the film about the escort girl a few months ago, and although it was a fictional character, she felt jealous and that she could be earning so much more. I just couldn't believe it all this time, what she has been doing all because of a stupid film. Then I ask her a big question. "Have you been sleeping with these clients?" She replied with yes, which I wasn't surprised with. She then goes on to saying how she wants me to forgive her and that she loves me and we can fix this and she'll stop working for the agency and she didn't have sex with every single client. But I had enough. I drove Maria straight to her parents' house and left her there. When I got back home myself, I just sat in the corner of my room in silence, just processing the situation. All could think was, how could such a happy and perfect married life change so drastically in just a couple of months because of some stupid film? After this, there was a lot more talking and working things out, and in the end of it all, me and Maria were divorced. Since then, I look after the kids, and Maria moved in with her parents. Every weekend, the boys get picked up and spend the weekend with Maria. Ever since, I have been living a happy single life. I realize that I have written a lot here, so I apologize about writing so much. But honestly, I have missed out a lot of details. Most particularly the bits around the time when I saw her in the bar, and when we got in the car afterwards, the bits in the car, when she told me everything. I am not able to describe it all, but I've written the main details.
Welcome to Lost Relation Chronicles.
Counseling. What a joke. Why should I need anger management? I only did what any normal guy would do, right? Sure, some people got hurt, but they had it coming. They were the ones who threw my life into chaos, so now theirs is spinning out of control too. Where's the harm in that? Hi, everyone. My name is Hank Wilson, and apparently, I have anger issues. I leaned back, folding my arms as I glanced around the room. This group counseling was court-ordered, and I was here against my will. I'm 35, married for now, and a father of 3, 2 boys and a girl I love more than anything. Jeff, the group counselor appointed by the court, looked at me with that practiced, neutral expression. Hank, can you tell us why the court mandated your presence here today? I sighed, feeling the weight of the eyes on me. Well, Jeff, that's not exactly a short story. Jeff gave me a nod, not missing a beat. That's fine, Hank. We have the next 3 hours. Take as long as you need. I felt the familiar rush of frustration simmering beneath my skin, but pushed it back as I started. I won't bore you with how I met my wife, but her name is Kathy, and there was a time I thought she was the most stunning woman alive. This all started because I went to a stag party. My brother was getting married, and we were sending him out with a bang. We went all out strippers and hooker. After all, this was my little brother. I told Kathy about every little part of it. I didn't want anything coming back on me. The party was a blast. It started about 3 p.m. on Saturday and ended Sunday at 7 p.m. It only ended then when the cops came to the room because of the noise. I had talked to Kathy at least 12 times over the length of the party. My brother got married, and they left for their honeymoon. It had been about 3 months since the party, and life was back to normal, or so I thought. I came home from work and went to the bathroom and took a long shower. I will be the first to admit it. I smelled like crap. I am a fisherman by trade, but I love working on the docks. I think it because the guys can be guys, you know. We hang out, talk shit and work. I was just coming out of the shower and everything went black. It had to be a truck, but how did it get in my bathroom? I tried to get up, but for some reason I couldn't move. I looked around and everything was fuzzy. All I could make out were 2 figures in front of me. As my eyes came into focus, my wife and her sister were standing in front of me. So, you want to cheat on me, said Kathy. What is wrong with you? I said and tried to get up and finally noticed that I was duct taped to the chair. And when I say duct taped, I mean it was wrapped around my ankles at least 20 times. I couldn't move 1 freaking inch. Let me go right now, I said. I will after I get even with you, you a-hole, said Kathy. Get even? What in the world was she talking about? I didn't do anything. My brother and I made sure we broke none of the rules that were set. They both left. I must have sat there for an hour before they came back. Kathy strolled in followed by 5 of the guys from the stag party. I looked up and told them to set me free. Mark had always been one of my oldest friends. I've known him for more than 20 years. He was my best man, and I named my son after him. His wife was the only woman in the world other than my wife that I truly trusted. Mark bent down and looked me straight in my eyes and said, Hank, you shouldn't have cheated on Kathy. And before I could respond, Kathy forced a gag into my mouth. Cheat on Kathy? That jerk knew I had never betrayed her. Needless to say, they screwed for 3 hours straight. When they finished, she went in the shower and left me alone with my 5 ex-friends. Mark said, too bad we didn't tape it. I just sat there, not moving, until one of the other guys removed the gag. I flexed my jaw and simply looked at them. Mark walked up and said, she was good. I have always wanted to screw her. I just couldn't pass up this chance. I know after this we won't be friends again, but I just had to do it. I didn't say anything, I just looked at him and smiled. Mark said, Hank, let it go, because if you don't, someone will get hurt. Then he punched me in the face with what I don't know, but I woke up about a couple hours later in the hospital. I looked over and saw Kathy sitting in the chair. She must have dozed off, so I got the nurse's attention. Can you please call the police for me, please? I asked. The nurse was about to ask why, when I showed her my wrists. She said she'd be right back. She came back about 5 minutes later and said they're on the way. When the officers got there, Kathy had finally woken up. She asked what was going on. I said, my name is Hank Wilson. About 7 hours ago, my wife had some men tie me down and humiliate me in front of her as payback for what she believed was me cheating on her. The only problem, other than her proving how much of a bitch she really is that I never cheated. I can give you the name of each person there. I know for a fact that 2 of the guys are cops. So if you aren't going to do your jobs, leave now, and when I get out I can take that to the state attorney's office." The officer said, "Sir, just tell us what happened." I explained everything to him about the party and the events that had taken place. Kathy just sat there, listening in shock. I told the officer that a recording of the party had been made as a way to keep everything on record. I also mentioned that if anyone had been with an escort, it would be clear on the tape. The officer stepped over to Kathy and asked her to stand. "Ma'am, you have the right to remain silent," the officer said as she was charged with assault and kidnapping. I provided them with the names of each of the men involved in the incident. I thought to myself, it's time to bring the pain. I had gotten hurt, now it was time to hurt everyone involved. As Kathy was being let out, she looked back and told me this wasn't over. "You're lying, Hank, and I'm going to make you pay." The officer told her that she also was being charged with making a threat against my person. I had a week hospital visit and formed a plan to bring the pain. I had quite a few licks to collect on. A lot of people were going to get hurt by this, so I had to be sure that I really wanted to get even. So I made a list. First, they put me in the hospital. Second, they lied on me and put me in the hospital. 3, they screwed my wife and put me in the hospital. 4, my wife is a 304 and helped them put me in the hospital. Well, so much for the list. They can have the 304, and besides, I am in the hospital. I am getting even if it kills me. What I had planned just might. I sat in the hospital for the next week plotting and planning. I got out of the hospital and went to the bank. I took out $500, and while I was there, the teller let me know that my wife had been trying to take out money. She got pissed when she found out that her name wasn't on any of my accounts. Then she came back with her lawyer and was told that even with a lawyer, her name wasn't on any of the accounts. They left pissed. I headed right to my brother and asked if he knew a good lawyer. He was pissed at me and asked how I could have our friends arrested. As I turned to leave, he ran out and stopped me. "Hank, what is going on?" asked my brother. For the next hour, I explained to him and his wife all that had happened. They sat there with their eyes bugged and mouths wide open. When I finished, his wife looked at me and called me a liar. My brother told her that I never lie and she should stay out of it. She told him he didn't know shit and to shut his mouth. He asked her what was wrong with her. If she was on that 304 side, then get out. "This is my brother, you moron." She looked at him and got up and left. She went in their bedroom, got her purse, and told him she was going out. My brother looked her in the eye and told her to let him make something perfectly clear to her. "If you get involved in this and you aren't on my brother's side, then let me know. We can get this marriage annulled, because you're either with us or you're not." She looked at him and walked out the door. We heard the car start then. The door opened and she walked and dropped her wedding ring on the floor. My brother said, "So be it." Then she turned and left. The first thing we both did was headed for a lawyer. We put my plan into motion. The shit would hit the fan by the end of the week. Friday, D-Day, started with a bang. At 9 o'clock, my realtor placed a for sale sign in my front yard, just as Kathy was leaving for work. Kathy jumped out the car and asked, "What are you doing?" The realtor showed her the owner was putting up the paperwork showing house for sale. Kathy screamed, "He couldn't do this." "Sure he can, it's his house." While at work, Kathy's boss walked in with a young guy and said that he was looking for her. The guy asked if she was Kathy Wilson. Kathy said, "Yes, I'm Kathy Wilson." He handed her a large brown envelope and said, "You've been served." Later that day, I received no less than 50 phone calls. 5 wives asked what the hell was going on. I told each and every one of them the whole story. I left nothing out. I received no less than 30 death threats. I recorded each of them. While they were ranting, I was laughing my butt off. It seemed to piss them off even more. What I'll never understand is when you screw some guy's wife and beat him up, why wouldn't you think he was going to get even? The next day, my lawyer delivered 5 sets of civil lawsuits. I was asking for $5 million apiece. I sued Kathy for causing body damage and theft of private property. My brother just chugged right along with me. He had a few run-ins with our so-called friends and family. The trial day for the assault charges were closing in. My brother's wife wanted to talk, but she had made her choice and so had he. As I was leaving work the day before the trial, Mark stepped out from behind a car and tried to grab me. I pulled out my .38 and shot him in his balls, by mistake of course. When the police got there, he was screaming that I tried to kill him. I told the cops what happened, and if they didn't believe me, go look at the security camera tapes. Mark started looking around and saw that there were cameras all over the place. "Mark, you're such a dumb idiot, but don't worry, they might be able to reattach your balls. But if they can't, we know who will be the bitch in jail. A man with no balls in prison. Boy, will you very be popular," I said. The officer came back with the security tapes and asked to see my gun permit. I pulled it out and showed it to him. The officer said I was free to go. The trial was a slam dunk. The stag party tape not only showed that I never cheated, it also showed me calling Kathy every few hours. Mark and Kathy decided to stand trial together. She just knew they would walk away free and clear. The judge asked Kathy who told her I cheated, and she said Mark. Mark's attorney said that it was a lie. He said Kathy was a 304 and had always wanted Mark to screw her. Kathy sat on the stand with her mouth open. Her attorney yelled, "Objection," and asked for a recess. Kathy's attorney came over to me and asked me to talk with him for a minute. "Hank, I know you hate her right now, but can you just let her go down in flames?" said her attorney. "Why would I help that bitch? They tied me up and put me in the hospital, and you want me to help her? Screw her. I could have died, so let her fry," I said as I walked away. Kathy asked if she could speak to me for a second. "Hank, I'm sorry. I know I screwed up. I was just so mad. I never thought he would have set me up. Come on, Hank, you know I have a bad temper. Hank, I know you still love me. Somewhere deep down you love me. So please put aside your pride and please help me," said Kathy. "Kathy, you hurt me. I mean, you really hurt me. I am going to go against my better judgment and ask the DA to take it easy on you," I said as I left to go chat with the DA. I smiled and walked over to the DA and bent down by his ear. "Fry this bitch, please." I looked over at them and gave them the thumbs up. I would help her like she helped me while I was tied and beat down. Now you want my help. Kathy was sentenced to 8 years. Mark was sentenced to 25 years. When the rest of the guys learned about the length of the jail sentences, they all wanted to make deals. Mark's wife Karen came up to me after he was sentenced. "Hank, I know he hurt you and ruined your marriage. But did you have to do this to us?" asked Karen. "Karen, I know you're hurting, but they tied me down. Your husband hit me so much I had a week's stay in the hospital. They and Kathy left me sitting there bleeding. I did what needed to be done. I wanted to kill them all. At least this way you have something to look forward to. He'll get out someday and you guys can move on. But I lost my wife, my friends, and some family, so who was hurt more?" I turned and walked away. You would think the story ends there, but it doesn't. I'm in anger management class because, while Mark was in jail awaiting transport to prison, I was arrested for drunk driving. While serving my 10 days, I kicked his butt as many times as I could. I bashed him in the face while we were in the rec room. I hit him with a metal tray. I kicked him in what was left his balls 10 times. When I had to face the judge, he said he figured out what I had done. He gave me a $50 fine and time served. Over the next 4 trials, I managed to get even with every one of those maggots. 2 of them got jumped doing a bar fight. While the cops were on the way, someone happened to have a taser gun. They both took over 1,000 volts to the nuts. The last 2 were beaten by 4 masked guys. Funny thing, I was in Texas visiting my cousin. So now I'm sitting here talking shit with you guys, because the judge thinks I have anger issues. They all sat there for a minute, and then they started clapping. I couldn't figure out what was going on. Jeff stood up and said, "Hank, you need to learn to go with the flow and not seek revenge." Then he looked at me and shook my hand. "Hank, you don't have to worry about losing money in your divorce. Mark and the others are in prison. What more could you ask for?" said Jeff. "Not one damn thing," I said. "Not one damn thing." I found out during the class that those a-holes got off easy. One of the guys in the class caught his wife cheating and shoved an axe handle up the guy's butthole. Another one placed a pair of vice grips on his wife's lover meat and locked it down. The guy who scared me the most was a doctor. He drugged his wife's lover and took off his balls. They all served at least 5 years, and as part of their parole, they had to come to this class. I guess the judge is trying to tell me something. My brother's wife is back home and is trying everything to get him to forgive her. Kathy was her best friend. So, I told him to at least try. I let him know that she had chosen our side because she could have told Kathy what was planned, and she didn't. I'm dating this wild redhead I met while at the prison giving Kathy the final divorce papers. It seems that she was there for the same thing. Karen's divorce to Mark was now final, and she asked me out to talk about what Mark asked her to do. It seems that Mark has a few new friends in prison, and he wants her to kill me so he can ask for a new trial. So she told him about her plan for revenge. "Mark, I promise you that Hank will pay. I will make it slow and lasting. He will look into my eyes and know how I felt about what happened," said Karen. Mark was a very happy man, and Karen was right. As I looked into her eyes, I saw nothing but love during that moment of connection. Kathy writes me every week asking me to come talk to her. She knows she was wrong. It's just that she was so mad. She has even been going to group to talk about her issues. I know how that feels. How am I feeling right now? I'm pretty damn good. Dear listeners, please share your thoughts in the comments section below, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.
My name is Ron, and I've been happily married to Lily for 15 years. Our family is a huge source of happiness for me, and I can really feel how much my wife loves me. Our marriage has grown in a way that makes me very happy. We're parents to two fantastic daughters in their early teens. Both of us have steady jobs. I work at a security company, and Lily is a voice translator at a film studio. We're healthy and live in a beautiful house in a nice area of the city. Life is great, and I don't think it could be any better. After our younger daughter was born, Lily gained some weight. However, her beautiful blue eyes, which stand out more behind her glasses, she doesn't use contact lenses because they bother her eyes when she reads or does paperwork, make her even more attractive. I'm deeply in love with Lily, and I know she loves me just as much. We have two amazing daughters, a comfortable house, and we don't worry about money. Everything was perfect in my life, but then something bad happened after 15 years of marriage that could change everything and ruin my once perfect and happy life. Lately, Lily began a routine of hanging out with her women colleagues at various bars every other Friday. They rotate among 3 or 4 places they like. She goes out these Fridays to chat and relax after work, as she often tells me. I'm okay with her going out by herself. I get home by 4:30 every day to look after our daughters when she's out with her colleagues. On those nights, I make dinner for the girls and help them with homework, which I really enjoy. She typically gets back by 8, and then we spend the whole weekend together doing fun family activities and eating out with our daughters on Saturday night. But in recent months, she's been getting home later, around 10, on these girls' nights, and I've noticed she's had a few drinks. I didn't bring it up because she's still the same affectionate wife she's always been. Every time she returns from those nights out, she has this special smile that makes me want to hug her. I understand that her time with friends is her way to unwind and forget about a tough work week. I convinced myself it was just harmless fun with her colleagues, even if she started coming home later than before. Then, a few weeks ago on a Monday morning, I received an email from someone who signed it as a friend. I almost deleted the message without reading it, but I decided to give it a second thought. The email said they were at the Black Crow last Friday and saw Lily enjoying herself with a group, especially dancing with a man from her group. They attached a picture taken with their cell phone, asking me to examine it closely. This email had already planted doubts in my mind, and I feared what I might find out. Despite knowing Lily danced during these outings, the email mentioned male coworkers, something she never told me. I always thought it was only her female friends, even though she could have been dancing with someone already at the Black Crow, not part of their group. A lump formed in my throat, and I started feeling uneasy about the whole situation. Despite my reservations, I opened the attachment. The moment the picture appeared, I noticed it wasn't perfectly centered, suggesting the photographer was cautious to avoid being seen. I observed my wife's coworkers, both male and female, sitting at a long table in the background. The picture was somewhat blurry, but I could still make out my wife on the right side of the dance floor. She wore her beige blouse with red flowers and green leaves, along with matching brown slacks, the same outfit from her last girls' night out. So I deduced the picture was taken the previous Friday when she arrived home later than usual at 10:30, giving me a hug and her usual smile. In the photo, she was on the dance floor with a tall young man, embracing tightly with both arms around his neck. To say I was shocked would be an understatement. I couldn't recall ever dancing like that with Lily or any other girl in public. The man's lower body pressed tightly against her, and it seemed she could feel his hardness rubbing against her. He had to be aroused, as it's impossible not to be in that situation. Strangely, Lily didn't seem bothered. On the contrary, she appeared happy, pushing herself against him as they locked eyes. My wife, the mother of my daughters, was in the arms of a stranger, behaving provocatively in public. I couldn't believe what I saw. She wouldn't dance with me like that in public. Why was she letting a stranger act this way? Or was he truly a stranger? Doubt firmly took hold in my mind and grew fast, beyond my control. Various scenarios of my wife with other men played out, making me feel sick. I rushed to the bathroom where I threw up my breakfast. Lily, my wife, was acting inappropriately in public. Was she having an affair? How could she do this to me and our 2 daughters? Many questions flooded my mind. Who was that man? Did they work together? How long had this been happening? Why was she involved with him? Update. For the next 30 minutes, I stayed in my office bathroom, trying to clear my thoughts. Gradually, new emotions started emerging: disappointment, sadness, and anger, followed by a strong desire for revenge. A range of intense emotions took over me, creating a whirlwind of reactions. I felt the urge to kick Lily, to hug her and ask her to stop, or even consider divorcing her. Then, a moment later, I'd think of forgiving her and giving her another chance. As I sat on the toilet, I thought I was losing my mind. Eventually, I regained control, deciding to do nothing but wait and watch Lily before taking any action. Making emotionally influenced decisions without knowing the full truth wouldn't make sense. I needed to wait and not tell her about what I already knew. Simultaneously, I was determined to get to the bottom of it all, one way or another. I had to get solid proof of what was going on. Was she cheating on me, or was she just having exaggerated fun? However, I already knew she had lied by omitting the whole truth about her evenings out with the girls. Her movie studio was only a couple of blocks away from my workplace. Since I was often on the road for work, checking on Lily was easy. The next day, at 11:30, I parked at the end of her workplace's parking lot. Feeling relatively safe with tinted windows, I watched the exit door until 1 o'clock, but she never came out. I repeated this for the rest of the week, and on Friday at 12:15, I saw Lily and 3 others, a woman and 2 men, get into a black BMW. Lily sat in front next to the driver, and they drove away. Naturally, I followed them. They drove downtown, entered the parking lot of a fancy restaurant, and I observed them laughing as they went inside. Parked in front of the restaurant, I stayed in my car until they came out at 2. Lily walked next to the tall, light-haired man, the driver, the same man she had been dancing with in the photo I already had. She seemed very cheerful and excited, touching his arms as they talked. This, more than anything else, angered me. They drove back to her workplace and all went inside. So far, Lily hadn't done anything wrong except for not mentioning to me that she sometimes went out to eat with both male and female coworkers. More importantly, the 4 of them at lunch acted as if they were 2 couples, not friends or coworkers, and that bothered me the most. That Friday, Lily didn't go out with the girls after work and got home at 5:15, cheerful and smiling as usual. It took a lot of willpower to control myself and not bombard her with questions. However, I asked her once while quietly sitting in front of the television after supper if she had a good day at work, and then I inquired about her lunch. For a few seconds, I noticed she didn't know exactly what to say, but soon enough, she told me she ate the tuna sandwich she had prepared before leaving for work in the morning. Calling her a liar and maybe a cheater, I told myself Lily was looking at me with those big blue eyes that I loved so much as she told that blatant lie. Although my anger was building, I still felt an urge to reach out and hug her. Of course, being in love with someone does that. I knew I had to control myself or risk doing something I might regret afterward. Instead of asking her more questions, I decided to change the subject and talk about my day at work, trying to act as I usually did every weekend. Lily probably didn't realize we were facing a significant issue. Later that night, we were closeness twice, and she behaved like the affectionate wife she always had been on Saturday. We took our daughters to the zoo, had a great family time, and for a brief moment, I forgot about the events of the past week. I didn't bother checking on her at noon for the rest of the week because I intended to follow her on Friday evening after work. On that Friday, when my 2 daughters arrived home at 4:15, I was already there waiting for them. After ordering pizza, I explained that I had to go to the office and would be home later in the evening. They were old enough to take care of themselves, and it didn't bother me to leave them alone in the house as long as they locked the door. I knew they would be in their room by the time I returned. At exactly 5, I got into my car and drove to Lily's workplace. I observed her getting into her car, and as she left the parking lot, she turned away from our home, heading to a pub for her evening out with the girls. I had no trouble following her, as there was a convoy of 6 cars between my SUV and her Toyota, all driving in the same direction towards a pub, watering hole, or a dance hall, whatever you want to call it. 10 minutes later, I saw Lily's Toyota and the other 6 cars entering the parking lot next to a combination bar restaurant called the Glass Shoe. I stayed in my car, parked at the other end when everyone was inside. I got out, walked around the place to learn more about where she was going. The pub was relatively distant from other buildings, surrounded by parking spaces. Two sides bordered streets, and the other two were defined by a well-trimmed, 5-foot-high cedar hedge, in front of which were parking spaces. I noticed the black BMW from the convoy, which Lily had gotten into for the restaurant the previous Friday. It was now parked separately in front of the cedar hedge, away from the other cars. I observed separate sets of doors, one for the restaurant and another for the bar. There were fire doors at the back for both, but those were for emergencies only. Another entrance on the other side, where most cars were parked, also led to the bar. However, Lily's group had entered through the door for the restaurant part of the building. I returned to my car and began changing into clothes I had brought for the occasion. I wore a baseball cap and a black windbreaker. Then I added a pair of glasses to my disguise. Then, to change my facial features somewhat, I inserted a protective denture into my mouth, similar to those worn by boxers. I knew I would have a hard time talking and drinking with this, but I didn't care, since it was not my intention to get into a discussion or get drunk. Looking in the rearview mirror, I knew that no one would recognize me. I waited another hour in my car before entering the bar. The group, including my wife, was seated together near the dance floor, drinking and having fun. Seeing Lily sitting close to the same guy she had gone to eat with the previous Friday saddened and disappointed me. I suspected that something might be going on between them. I picked a table at the back, far from them, to quietly observe. The section where I sat was dimmer. There were a couple of lonely souls, like me, drowning their sorrows. I knew no one would pay attention to me there. Soon the music started, and people moved to the dance floor. I noticed Lily dancing with the guy who sat next to her. The other three guys at their table had weird smiles, watching them dance. It was clear Lily and that guy were a couple, catching everyone's attention. After a couple of hours, only Lily, another girl, and two men remained. The rest had left. Both couples were on the dance floor, and my wife had her arms around the guy. It was evident they were lovers. He had his hands on Lily's waist, and they barely moved on the dance floor, just standing and rubbing against each other. Then I saw him kiss her and say something in her ear. I watched her nod, and they left the building, holding hands. I followed them. It was already quite dark outside. I saw them walk hand in hand to his car, parked in the last row of the parking lot, near the cedar hedge. He knew they wouldn't be bothered there with no other cars nearby and the hedge at the back. What were they planning? How far would Lily let it go? I needed to find out. Carefully, I walked to the other end of the parking lot, and then toward the cedar hedge. Staying close to the 5-foot-high hedge, I walked toward their car, hiding behind parked cars. Soon, I stood by the back of his BMW. At first, I saw no one inside due to the darkness. As I moved closer, attempting to look inside, the deeply tinted windows revealed nothing, but I heard muffled voices. Feeling desperate, I debated whether to intervene or wait to catch Lily in the act. After a brief moment, the decision was no longer mine. When I noticed the car shaking rhythmically, the guy was fooling around with my wife. I couldn't contain my rage. I yanked the door open, flooding the car with light, revealing my wife, Lily, lying on her back with her lover on top of her, caught red-handed. Having removed my disguise, Lily's eyes met mine, her expression shifting from bliss to shock in seconds. She mumbled an apology, urging me not to act rashly. Then, with urgency, she declared it meant nothing and asked me to wait for her, claiming she was going home. Slamming the door shut, I walked away, heading straight to my car. By the time I left the parking lot, Lily was already halfway to me, shouting for me to wait. Update. Lily arrived home less than 5 minutes after I did, appearing disheveled with messy hair and crumpled clothes. Tearfully, she approached me. She expressed deep remorse, apologizing for hurting me and breaking our marriage vows. Lily claimed that had she known I was being betrayed, she could have engaged in similar indiscretions. Despite her pleas, I felt an unexpected surge of anger. Her apologies continued as she insisted that her actions meant nothing to her, professing love for me and emphasizing the importance of our family. Overwhelmed, she cried, hiding her face and eventually sitting on the couch due to shaky legs. Dismissing her apologies, I asserted that what she did to our marriage was didn't diminish her love for me. Expressing my inability to live with the public nature of her affair, I highlighted the impact on our reputation among coworkers and at social events. Lily begged for forgiveness, vowing that the betrayal would not recur and emphasizing the importance of salvaging our marriage and family. While she continued to speak, I stood up, turning away from her. I decided to leave to give myself time to think. I confronted her about destroying our marriage through her initial infidelity. A sudden cry and loud moan caught my attention, prompting me to look back at Lily on the floor, crying in desperation. Despite the overwhelming urge to comfort her, the anger and sense of betrayal made it clear I couldn't trust myself to stay near her. I silently left the house, spending the night in a hotel room without sleep. The next morning, I called my secretary and informed her I wouldn't be going to work for the day. I stayed in my room until noon. After grabbing a quick bite at the hotel restaurant, I passed by my house on the way to the office. There was a green Toyota in the driveway, which I recognized as Francine's, Lily's sister. At least I thought my daughters had their aunt's company along with that of my cheating wife, providing a bit of comfort. What I didn't know then was that Lily was in the hospital. After leaving the house the previous evening, explaining the situation to her sister on the phone, Lily had a breakdown. It was only once I reached my office that I got the news. Francine, Lily's sister, called me, and we had a lengthy conversation. She explained that Lily was emotionally distressed and crying constantly. Less than an hour after I left the house the previous evening, my eldest daughter called Francine, saying Lily was delirious and I was not home. Francine then talked to her sister and promptly called an ambulance when she realized Lily's condition. Francine let me know she was still at my house, taking care of my two daughters for a few days. She strongly suggested that I visit my wife at Santa Mary's Hospital in town. After the call ended, I was beyond shocked. Had I been selfish the previous evening? Did I abandon my family when they needed me the most? Maybe. But one thing was clear. If I stayed in the house with her that evening, there was a chance, however small, that I might have become violent due to what she had done. Yes, she wrecked our marriage, but until yesterday, I didn't see myself as someone who avoided problems. Was that exactly what I had done? Lily and I faced a significant problem, undoubtedly. But was that reason enough for me to abandon my family when they needed me? I felt terrible. Sitting behind my desk, I started crying, questioning if there could have been another way, a better way, with forgiveness and maybe reconciliation, a slim possibility. Of course, this mess was Lily's doing. She was entirely responsible for giving another man what should have been mine alone. However, breaking my marriage would hurt my two daughters too much. There had to be another solution. That's when I thought of forgiveness with retribution. Once I recovered from the shock of learning about Lily's hospitalization, I got in my car and drove to the hospital. I had no idea what I would say to her, but one thing was certain. I was going to face the situation and find out exactly what she had done.
Now I find myself lying in a hospital bed. A thought crosses my mind, recalling something my mother used to say. Cheaters always face consequences one way or another. Ron and I tied the knot when I was 20, and we were genuinely happy. We had two amazing daughters, a lovely home in a great neighborhood, and financial stability. More importantly, I loved my husband, and I knew he loved me back. When my youngest daughter turned 6, I landed a job at a film studio near Ron's workplace. With the fall of the Iron Curtain and the gradual democratization of communism, there was a high demand for U.S. films in Ukraine. Being fluent in Ukrainian and having acting experience from university, I secured a position as a female voice translator for English films, translating them into the Ukrainian language. It was a fantastic job with good pay, and I excelled at it. After 5 years, a new voice translator named Victor Daninko joined us. He was a tall, attractive man in his late 20s with dark blonde hair. Most girls at the studio had a crush on him, but he seemed oblivious to the attention. Vic, born in the U.S. with Ukrainian-speaking grandparents, was perfectly bilingual. We started working together often, and a deep friendship developed between us. That's when my troubles began. Without realizing it, I found myself thinking I was in love with him. Initially, he treated me like the other girls, discussing work matters, and we worked well together. Eventually, he started joining us on alternate Fridays, and our friendship grew into something deeper. We became more than just colleagues. We became good friends. I confided in him about my life, sharing things I had never told my husband, especially when Vic began joining us at the pubs. My first mistake was not telling Ron that our girls' night out was now mixed. I enjoyed Vic's company and didn't want to share his attention with my husband on those nights. Our friendship turned into something deeper, and we found ourselves dancing together frequently. I didn't realize how far things had gone until one evening, while dancing to a slow song, he kissed me passionately. It wasn't a friendly or family kiss. I was shocked. That's how it all started. The following Friday, he found an excuse to take me out of the pub, and we engaged in closeness moments in his car. From there, our passion escalated, and soon we were engaging in more explicit activities in the backseat of his car. Despite feeling guilty when I got home, I made sure to show Ron the love he deserved. However, I failed to realize that Ron, as my husband, deserved my complete love, and I shouldn't have given any of it to Vic. Working with Vic every day made it impossible to keep away from him. Gradually, even at work, we developed the habit of hugging and kissing when no one was around. From my perspective, this behavior with Vic didn't diminish my love for Ron. I still would have given my life for him, and I had no intention of hurting him with my affair with Vic. I was wrong. Making love with Vic wasn't better than making love with my husband. By the time Ron found out about my affair with Vic, we had been lovers for 4 months. While I didn't love Vic like I loved my husband, the physical aspect was fantastic. The freedom I felt with Vic, not having to restrain myself, made all the difference. When making love with my husband, I had to hold back to avoid him thinking less of me. With Vic, I had no such restrictions since I didn't care what he thought about me. This was the main reason I did things with Vic that I had never done with my husband. I think Vic and I were really thoughtless and careless in how we behaved in front of our colleagues. Vic didn't care much since he wasn't married. But because of our public behavior, it was only a matter of time before my husband found out about me and Vic from a jealous coworker. We should have been more discreet. Even if Ron never found out about my affair, I now understand it would still have been terribly wrong. The evening Ron caught us was the worst moment of my life. He yelled at me to go to hell and take my lover with me. Just before he turned to leave the car, I knew my marriage was in deep trouble. I even stepped on Vic in my rush to leave his car and catch up with my husband, but I was too late. By the time I was halfway to his car, he was speeding away, leaving me standing there in the middle of the parking lot. Until then, I considered my love for Ron like a fire, burning only for him, and I knew he felt the same about me. Then one day, when Vic entered my life and kissed me for the first time, it was like a spark from that fire ignited another fire, burning for Vic. These emotions for Vic didn't take anything away from the love I felt for my husband. I convinced myself it was like when my youngest daughter was born. Loving her with all my heart didn't reduce the love I still had for my eldest daughter. It's incredible the things we tell ourselves to justify our basest urges. Children don't expect a parent to love only them, and we never vow to our children to forsake all others. Yes, the love of a parent for a child is far different from the love one should have for their spouse. But I made sure those thoughts never reached my consciousness while I played games with Vic. I know my husband doesn't see it the same way I did then, and I don't blame him. I understand that if the roles were reversed and he had another woman in his life, I would be devastated. Human thoughts and emotions are mysterious, and sometimes we shouldn't try to reason them. So now I'm here in a hospital bed. Each time I wake from my dreamless rest, I start thinking about the events of the last few months. I cry and feel sorry for myself. Then the nurse injects me again with something, and I sleep once more. A wonderful sleep that allows me to forget everything. I wish I could never wake up again and find peace with myself. But each time, just before I pass out, I see a picture of Ron and me on our wedding day. Oh, God help me. My children, my husband, I can't leave them. I must fight the urge to hide on the other side. Life is a never-ending combat. My father once told me, if you stop fighting, then you had no right to be living in the first place. I am alive. Ron and my daughters are alive, and I will live also. After all, they are the loves of my life. Yes, I will fight for my husband and my family. To me, Vic is just dirt now. He had absolutely no right to be in my life in the first place. If Ron allows me, I will be once again and for the rest of my life the faithful wife I used to be. When I wake up, how long in the future? I don't know. But I will come back into my family's world. Of that, I am certain. When I do, the first thing I hope to see is my husband standing there in front of me so that I can start the difficult task of making it up to him. I don't know how many days I have to stay here in the hospital bed, but I beg everyone to pray for Ron and our daughters.
Life had a way of settling into patterns, some comforting, others mundane. I often woke before dawn, savoring the stillness before the rest of the house stirred. In those early hours, with only the soft hum of the fridge and the occasional creak of the floorboards for company, I felt most at ease. It was my time to reflect, to remember why I had chosen this life, with its moments of joy interspersed with the weight of responsibilities. Katie and I met in college, a whirlwind romance that felt too good to be true. She was all fire and determination, the kind of woman who made you feel like you could conquer anything with her at your side. We married young, and within a few years, Jill and Jenny came along. Our daughters were the heart of our world, bright, vivacious, and occasionally maddening in the way only teenage girls could be. As the years passed, our family found its rhythm. Katie managed the logistics of our lives, ensuring that birthdays were celebrated and dentist appointments weren't missed. Meanwhile, I found joy in the simpler things, fixing the leaky faucet, organizing Sunday BBQs, and being the constant presence my daughters could rely on. It wasn't perfect, but it was ours. Father's Day was one of those rare occasions when the spotlight turned to me. Katie and the girls made sure I felt special, even if the celebrations were modest. A homemade breakfast, a heartfelt card, and a few hours together. It was all I ever wanted. I never needed grand gestures. The love we shared was enough. Yet beneath the surface of our seemingly happy life, I'd started to notice subtle shifts. Katie worked later, smiled less, and seemed distant even in her moments of presence. At the time, I dismissed these changes as the inevitable result of a busy life. In hindsight, those moments were signposts I chose to ignore, guiding me toward a truth I wasn't ready to face. Last year's Father's Day began in the same unremarkable way as every other. I rose early, quietly leaving the house to avoid waking Katie and the girls, who would undoubtedly sleep in. Mother's Day was my time to shine. I would whip up a hearty breakfast, curate a light midday snack of wine, cheese, and fruits, and end the day with a steak dinner paired with a rich Cabernet. When the girls were younger, they'd eagerly help me in the kitchen, though as teenagers, they left most of the work to me. In contrast, Father's Day meant Katie taking over the breakfast duties, a gesture I appreciated even if I often skipped the meal altogether, preferring to keep my appetite in check for later. That year, I waited for her to wake up so she could make me breakfast, something she didn't know I usually skipped in the mornings to avoid being too hungry. She kissed me, wished me a happy Father's Day, and immediately went to prepare breakfast. We had lunch at a quirky Doctor Who-themed cafe, which turned out to be a fun way to spend the day. My wife is extremely organized, always keeping track of the calendar, from holidays to the kids' schedules. She rarely misses anything, except when I forget something. The following year, she pointed out while going over the calendar that my birthday happened to fall on Father's Day. I wasn't shocked, joking that I hoped I wasn't going to get shortchanged on presents. She laughed and promised something extra special. I couldn't help but wonder if that meant more than the usual birthday and Father's Day treat, a routine that had developed between us over time. She would always start it during foreplay and only finish it on those 2 days. But as the weeks passed leading up to that year's Father's Day, I noticed a change in my wife's behavior. She started working late, snapping at the kids and me, and dressing up more often. She wore makeup, scarves, and low-cut shirts at work, things she had never done before. The Friday before my birthday, she put on a short skirt, stockings, and heels. She told me she was going out with some coworkers, which was unusual since we normally spent Friday nights together. I was surprised and asked if I had forgotten any plans, but she claimed it was a last-minute thing. Her response felt off, though. I was taken aback when she rushed out the door, far more dressed up than usual. Something didn't sit right with me, but I couldn't figure out why. I tried to shake off the feeling, but it lingered. She came home just before midnight, her hair in a simple ponytail instead of the styled look she had earlier. She walked past me without saying anything and went upstairs. A few minutes later, I heard the shower running. I couldn't help but wonder what she had done that required a shower before bed. She didn't come downstairs to say goodnight, and that's when I realized something was off. The next morning, I left for work early, but there was no kiss goodbye, something that had never happened. I was unsettled, but I tried to focus on the day ahead. At the store, Missy, the morning barista, was waiting by the entrance. She was a pretty redhead with striking blue eyes, and even though I was happily married, I couldn't help but notice her. "Hey, Bill," she greeted me. "Good morning, Missy," I replied. She could tell something was bothering me and asked if I was okay. I told her I had a lot on my mind. She offered me a coffee, which I gratefully accepted. As she prepped for the morning rush, I checked in with my team. I made sure to visit every department, even though my managers were competent. I wanted to build strong relationships with the staff. My last stop was the coffee shop, where Missy had my usual black coffee ready. "Here you go, boss," she said with a smile. "Thanks, Missy," I said, leaving a $2 tip. She tried to refuse, but I insisted. "I can't risk a complaint," I joked, referring to how even the smallest issue could lead to a corporate call. She laughed it off, and I went back to work, trying to focus on the day ahead. The day was mostly uneventful, with the most memorable part being when an elderly woman was caught trying to steal cat and bird food. It was a distraction I needed, something to keep my mind off the strange situation with my wife. When I got home, my wife and daughters were getting ready to leave for a concert, a plan they'd made weeks ago, but which I had completely forgotten about. My daughter gave me a kiss goodbye, but my wife didn't acknowledge me at all. I still couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't right, and I couldn't stop thinking about the odd events from the night before. Later that evening, I tried to dig a little deeper. I checked her email, but there was nothing suspicious. She had a cell phone, so I couldn't check her messages or call logs. I even peeked in the laundry hamper, but since it was Saturday, she'd already done the laundry. I didn't find anything, and after watching a movie, I went to bed feeling just as uneasy as before. On the morning of my birthday and Father's Day, I went through my usual routine: coffee, toast, and some quiet time outside enjoying the nice weather. When I went inside to refill my coffee, I was surprised to see my wife and daughters already up and packing lunch. "We're going to the beach," my daughter Jill said. I went upstairs to get dressed, but as I was putting on my shirt, I heard my daughter Jenny yell, "Bye, Daddy," and the door slammed. I looked out the window as they drove off. It hit me. They had remembered my birthday, but I never expected Katie to forget. Standing in the living room, I heard my phone ring. It was my mom. "Happy birthday and Father's Day, Billy," she greeted me. "Thanks, Mom," I replied. "Kathy has big plans for you today," she said. "No, she took the girls to the beach a while ago," I explained. "That's unusual. She doesn't usually do that," Mom remarked. "I don't know. She's been acting strange lately," I confessed. "Don't worry, she's probably got something planned for later. Love you, Billy," Mom reassured me. "Love you too, Mom," I said. I was still trying to wrap my head around everything my mom had said when the phone rang again. It was Anne, my assistant. "Bill, we had an issue at the shop," Anne said. "What's going on?" I asked, already feeling anxious. "Missy was pushed on the stairs by a customer. She fell and might have broken her arm," Anne explained. "Is she okay?" I asked, the concern rising in my chest. "They took her to the hospital for x-rays," Anne replied. "Damn, that's awful. Is everything covered on your shift?" I asked, trying to stay calm. "Yeah, we're all good here. Just didn't want to catch you off guard," Anne said. "Thanks for the heads up, Anne." I hung up, my mind still reeling from everything that had been happening. I assumed my wife and kids wouldn't be back anytime soon, so I decided to go out for breakfast on my own. I headed to IHOP, but as soon as I walked in, I knew I'd made a mistake. The place was packed with families celebrating Father's Day, and it hit me hard. I left almost immediately and ended up at McDonald's instead. Eating alone in the park, I thought about the lake I used to take my daughters to when they were younger. They had loved it back then, but as they grew up, I started to feel like a stranger to them. By 1 p.m., I still hadn't heard a word from my wife. I figured dinner plans were off, and I found myself at the Doctor Who Cafe, posting a picture of my lunch online. As usual, I got a bunch of likes and Father's Day wishes, but then I noticed a comment from my mother-in-law. She assumed I was with my family at the beach, since Katie had posted a few pictures from there. I finished my sandwich and decided to head to a nearby sports bar to unwind with a beer. The place was packed, so I slipped next door into a cigar lounge, treating myself to an expensive $60 cigar. "Happy birthday to me," I muttered as I lit it. I sat at the bar, turned on the Sox game, and a couple of guys invited me to join their card game. "I'm Bill," I said, introducing myself. "I'm Lance, and this is my brother Jerry," the older man said. They finished their hand and dealt me in. "Help yourself to a drink, Bill," Lance offered, grabbing a cooler. I grabbed a Miller Lite, and Jerry asked, "No kids today, or is the ex with someone new?" I felt a wave of discomfort. "My wife and daughters are at the beach. They didn't even remember today." "That's rough," Lance said. "My boys are both in the military." "My daughter's in California," Jerry added. "My grandson just turned 2. I'm visiting next week." "Sounds nice," I replied, forcing a smile. "When my girls were younger, I used to take them to the lake. They loved it." They nodded, and after a few minutes, the conversation veered back to my situation. "Do you think she really forgot, or is she just avoiding you?" Jerry asked. I explained the changes I had noticed in my wife recently, and they exchanged looks. "She's cheating on you," Lance asked bluntly. The question hit me like a slap in the face, and I tried to brush it off, but the idea started to fester. I didn't want to believe it, but it was hard to ignore. Lance leaned forward. "Look, I've been there. The dressing up, the late nights out. My wife did the same thing, and when I found out I'd divorced her, it was the biggest mistake I ever made." I frowned, not understanding. "How is divorcing her a mistake? If she cheats, that's it." Lance sighed, his voice softer now. "I was paying alimony for years. I was broke. I missed her every damn day. Eventually, we got back together, and we're happy now." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. If she's cheating, there's no way I could forgive that. I couldn't stay with someone who betrayed me like that. Lance shook his head. "You don't get second chances at love when you're our age, Bill. If you still love her, you'll find a way to forgive." I was still processing it all as I excused myself. "Thanks, Lance. I'll think about it," I said, though deep down I couldn't imagine ever forgiving her. I shook their hands and left. When I got back to my phone, I saw more posts from Katie and the girls at the beach. My heart sank. Forget it, I told myself. Stop being a sufferer. It stung that my wife had forgotten my birthday and Father's Day, but deeper than that, I had a growing suspicion that she'd been seeing someone else for weeks. I needed to focus on something else, so I decided to go to dinner at my favorite steakhouse. I knew there'd be a wait, but I didn't care. I showered, put on a jacket, and went out to treat myself. I arrived and ordered a glass of champagne. The older man next to me eyed my drink before ordering a martini. The bartender refilled my glass, and the man asked, "Celebrating alone, or am I taking someone's place?" "No, I'm alone," I replied. He nodded. "My wife's helping my daughter. She broke her arm today. You don't expect your grown kids to still get hurt?" I chuckled. "Looks like I'm going solo for a while. My wife's caught up with other things." Then a little girl ran up to him shouting, "Grandpa!" She jumped into his lap, hugging him tightly. A few moments later, I heard someone call my name. "Bill?" I turned and saw Missy with a woman who looked a lot like her. I assumed it was her mother. "How's your arm, Missy?" I asked, trying to mask my discomfort. "It's fine," she said, smiling faintly. "The painkillers are helping, but it hurt like hell when they set the bone." Missy introduced me to her parents, Jack and Mary, and her little girl, Mia. "Where's your wife, Bill?" Missy asked innocently. "I'm not sure," I answered. "She took the girls to the beach this morning, and I haven't heard from them since—" "Really? On Father's Day?" Missy said, surprised. "That's pretty rough." Mary looked shocked. "She blew you off on your day? What kind of person does that?" I shrugged, not wanting to go into the details. "Forget about her," Mary said, dismissing it. "You're with us now." I understood Jack's earlier comment about red rage. "I don't think I can," I said. "Come on, don't let it get to you," Jack said with a grin. "It's your day, too." "But it's your day, Jack," I protested. "I don't want to crash your celebration." "Nonsense," he said. "This is our day, too." "Grandpa," Mia called, cutting our conversation short. "I know, Pumpkin," Jack said with a chuckle. "I'll be in trouble later." "Daddy," Mia said, looking up at him. Jack winked at me as their buzzer went off. "Pay up, Bill, and meet us at the table." I slipped a $20 bill on the counter, following them to their table. "I'm sorry, Bill," Missy said as I sat down. "My parents can be a bit much." "No worries," I replied. It's better than being alone. During dinner, we swapped stories about our kids, and Mia laughed at the funny anecdotes about her mom's childhood. As my phone buzzed, I saw it was Katie calling. I let it ring, leaving the phone face down on the table. "Your wife?" Mary asked, noticing. "Yeah," I said quietly. "It's more than you think, isn't it?" Missy asked gently. "I think so," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. "But I don't have any proof." "Everyone makes mistakes," Mary said, glancing at Jack. "Maybe you can forgive her." Missy shot her a look, but I didn't comment. I signaled the waiter to bring the check and paid for the meal. "Thanks for inviting me, Bill," Jack said with a handshake. "It was a pleasure," I said. "Happy Father's Day." When I left, I still didn't have the proof I needed, but I felt unsettled. 2 people had suggested I might be able to forgive her. I wasn't sure I could. When I got home, the girls ran up to me, apologizing for forgetting Father's Day. "Don't worry about it," I said, hugging them both. "I didn't expect you to remember." Jill ran inside to tell Katie, "It's your birthday today. We didn't know. I'm so sorry." She broke down in tears, pressing her face into my chest. "You must hate us." "No, sweetheart, I love you both," I reassured her. "Your mom suggested the beach, and we didn't think—" She trailed off. "It's fine," I said. "Don't worry about it." I didn't mention the anger I felt toward their mother. That was something I'd deal with later. "Let's go inside," I said softly. After changing into something comfortable, I came downstairs to find Katie sitting alone, crying. "I'm sorry," she whispered. But I didn't respond. I walked outside to the deck, cracked open a beer, and tried to focus on something other than her tears. Then I heard the sliding door open. "Bill, What's his name?" I interrupted, not looking at her. She stayed silent. "Bill, what's his name, the man you were with on Friday?" My anger surged as soon as she didn't deny it. That was it. I knew I was going to need a divorce lawyer. Nearly 2 decades of marriage, gone. I had been such a fool. As my mind raced, I couldn't help but wonder how long this had been going on, whether he was the first, or if I even knew him. Betrayal has a way of making everything spiral out of control. I made up my mind. I'd request a paternity test for the girls during the divorce. It would give me some peace of mind and force Katie to face the consequences of her actions. The rest of the night was spent scouring divorce laws online, and by the time I drifted to sleep, it was on the couch. That's how I spent my birthday. I woke early to find Katie still in bed, curled up around her pillow, looking peaceful. She looked beautiful, even though she wasn't mine anymore. I grabbed what I needed, showered quickly, and slipped out of the room without waking her. As I walked down the hallway, Jill was standing there waiting. "How bad is it, Dad?" she asked, her face filled with concern. I let out a heavy sigh. "This is as bad as it gets." "Can you forgive her? It's just one day, right?" Jill pressed. "She didn't just forget my birthday or Father's Day," I answered, my voice breaking. "She cheated on me." Jill shook her head in disbelief, her voice trembling. "No, Daddy, she wouldn't do that." "She did, but I won't forgive it," I said firmly. Jill paused, then spoke slowly, as if trying to reason with me. "Think about it. The last few weeks she's been different. Friday, after getting a tan and doing her hair, she dressed up like she was going to a club. That wasn't for me." I nodded, my frustration growing. "She barely spoke to me all weekend. She was clearly avoiding me." Jill seemed to soften, her voice quiet but insistent. "When has she ever taken you to the beach without me? What if it wasn't an affair, just a mistake? Can't you find a way to forgive her?" I shook my head. "I don't think I can. Look at her actions. She hasn't treated me like she loves me for weeks. When Grandma asked why she didn't call Grandpa on Father's Day, she screamed no, so loud we thought he was having a heart attack. "Dad, he's fine," Jill said quickly, but Mom was sobbing. She kept saying she loved you over and over. Jenny even wanted to call an ambulance for her. I don't know what to say, Jill. You can't cheat and still claim to love someone. It's selfish, not love. She chose him over me." Jill hugged me tight, tears streaming down her face. "Please, don't divorce her. I need to go to work. We'll talk more later." I turned to leave. Jill walked into Jenny's room. "I'll tell her what we talked about. No more secrets." I couldn't help but wonder how long we'd still be a family. Kathy had been too busy to reach out, so I kept my composure. The only thing out of the ordinary was filling out Missy's accident paperwork. She was going to be compensated for her vacation, and I hoped she wasn't too stressed out. I didn't know much about her personal life, only that she wasn't married. Missy came by to sign the forms. She couldn't use her left hand, so I filled out the accident report for her. "How's everything at home?" she asked, her voice cautious. "Not good," I replied. She didn't deny the affair when I confronted her. "Damn, Bill, I'm sorry," Missy said. "I know you probably don't want to hear this, but I get it. My ex cheated on me while I was pregnant. I kicked him out before our daughter was born." "Your mom said she forgave Kathy last night. It felt strange," I said. She looked right at your dad when she said it. "Yeah, I noticed. Makes me wonder if one of them was cheating too," Missy mused. "I'm sorry," I muttered. "You don't have to be," Missy replied. "They seem happy enough, so they're free to do what they want." "I don't trust liars," I said flatly. After work, Kathy wasn't home. I assumed she was with her new guy, and it pissed me off. I drove to her grocery store and saw her car in the parking lot. To my surprise, she was sitting in the car with a younger man. When she saw me, she yelled, "No," and jumped out of the car, but I didn't stick around. If she wanted to cheat, let her. She could have him. I was done. I went home, packed a bag, and planned to stay at a hotel until I found a place of my own. Before I could leave, Jenny and Jill came running to me, crying and begging me to stay. "Sorry, girls, but your mom was about to cheat on me. I saw her with a guy in her car." "Dad, this has to be a mistake," Jenny said, desperation in her voice. "I saw what I saw. She was with a man after work. Why else would she be with him in the car?" "Please, Daddy, don't break up the family," Jenny sobbed. "Your mom did this, not me," I said, hugging them both tightly. "I love you both. I'll stay in touch every day," I whispered, kissing their cheeks. I left them crying in the bedroom and went to the garage. As I pulled out, Kathy nearly ran me off the road, speeding away. I shook my head but kept driving. The following week was a nightmare. Kathy bombarded me with calls every hour for 3 straight days. She must have taken vacation since she couldn't call from work. Her voicemails were desperate, but I deleted them all. After a few days, my mother, mother-in-law, both daughters, and Kathy's sister all begged me to talk to her. They kept telling me it wasn't as bad as I thought, but when I asked them if she cheated, they went silent. They all knew, but none of them would admit it. I stopped answering calls altogether. I told the girls I'd talk to them, but not about their mother. They didn't believe me until I hung up twice. By the end of the week, I'd met with a lawyer. I wanted a 50-50th split of the house, with her staying there until the girls moved out, then selling it. The lawyer said I could get more, but I didn't care. The best part? I wouldn't have to pay her alimony. She made enough money to support herself, and I wasn't about to fund her relationship with her lover. The problem was, I didn't have concrete proof of the affair. Without that, the judge might classify it as irreconcilable differences. But my lawyer had the divorce papers ready, and I felt a sense of relief. No forced mediation, no long battle, just a fair split. Kathy fought back once she received the divorce papers, claiming she only slept with one man, the Friday before my birthday. Her family turned on me again, saying I was the bad guy for not letting her explain. As if any explanation would make it okay. My mother called me weak for not fighting for my marriage. My mother-in-law said I'd broken my vows too. My daughters begged me to stay, saying the divorce would scar them. It was unreal. I hadn't done anything wrong, yet somehow I was being blamed. I even asked my daughters for DNA tests, telling them it was a court order. Kathy sent me a letter, admitting to the affair but trying to downplay it, claiming it was just one time with the 21-year-old and that he was worthless. She also claimed I told the guy to never contact her again after I caught her. It didn't matter. She had cheated. That was enough. And the best part? Her letter gave me the evidence I needed. I didn't even need to prove infidelity in court. Despite her resistance, the judge approved the divorce within 60 days, and I was labeled the bad guy. My family stopped speaking to me, but I stood firm. I called my daughters every day, leaving voicemails, but they never picked up. I refused to let them blame me for the silence. On Sundays, I started meeting Missy for coffee. It was a coincidence at first, when I ran into her and Mia at a local cafe. I invited them to join me, and we spent a while talking, with Mia busy playing on my iPad. Missy tried to reassure me that my daughters would eventually come around, even though I feared Kathy's influence might have a stronger pull on them. The following Sunday, I saw them again. Missy teased me, asking if I was stalking her. I laughed and told her that I just appreciated the quiet mornings. It wasn't intentional, but we ended up meeting each week. Her company was easy to enjoy, and Mia's energy was a welcome distraction. The day my divorce was finalized, I went to the house where I'd spent almost 2 decades with Kathy. She answered the door, her face blotchy from crying. Without saying a word, she gestured for me to come inside. "Are the girls home?" I asked. "They're at the school play," Kathy replied, her voice breaking slightly. "I know why you're here," she said, her voice low. "Really?" I shot back, a bitter smirk crossing my face. "You waited until it was too late to stop this, didn't you?" "I knew you'd try to get me back," she admitted. "But I couldn't let that happen." "You broke my heart," I said, my voice flat. "I'm not forgiving you." "Bill, it was just one mistake. Why can't you forgive me? Didn't you love me like you used to?" she cried, tears streaming down her face. I laughed darkly. "Did you love me when you were flirting with him? Did you love me when you ignored me on my birthday? If that's love, then I don't know what to say." "I never wanted any of this," she sobbed. "I never wanted a wife who cheated on me," I snapped. "But here we are." She gasped, but I cut her off before she could say anything else. "Not only did you break my heart, but you turned my family against me. I'll never forgive you for that." "It's your fault for overreacting," she shot back defensively. I could feel my anger flare again. "If you don't get my family to apologize to me, I'll tell every man you date what you did. I'll make sure no one ever trusts you again." "You can't blame me for this," she said, almost pleading. "Oh, really? Did I cheat on you?" I retorted. "You've taught our daughters that cheating is fine. They'll grow up thinking it's acceptable and I'll be the villain. Well, I'm done. I'm not going to keep playing the fool while you chase some guy's attention." I pulled my hand out of hers. "Rot in hell," I spat, turning and walking out as she cried behind me. A few weeks later, Missy stopped by my office. "Got a minute, Bill?" she asked, her voice light. "Sure," I replied, unsure of what was coming next. "Does the company have any rules about dating employees?" she asked, and I immediately understood what she was implying. "I was hoping to ask you out," I admitted, unable to hide my smile. "We do have a strict maltreatment policy," I continued. "If things don't work out, it's on us, not the company." "Good," she said, handing me a folded note with her address and phone number. "Dinner tomorrow night. Mia's coming too." I grinned. "I'm looking forward to it." She left with a light-hearted step, and I couldn't wait for the evening to come. Later, I left a voicemail for my daughters, letting them know I missed them and giving them an update on my life. I knew it might stir things up, but I was ready to move on. Missy seemed like a good place to start. Missy was not only beautiful, but also genuine, and I'd already met her sweet daughter and her warm parents. It felt like a fresh start, something I desperately needed. Then just 15 minutes later, I got a text from Kathy. "I can't believe you're already dating. You're a fool." I laughed to myself, realizing how delusional she was. I wasn't mourning our marriage. At 41, I was still young enough to start over. Missy was in her early 30s, and maybe she'd want more kids down the road. But for now, I knew she was looking for something serious, not just a fling. That evening, I prepared for dinner with Missy. I felt good about myself, fit, successful, and ready for a new chapter. But as I thought about dating again, I realized how much things had changed. Dating was different when you weren't married anymore. Back then, everything had been so easy. I even found myself worrying about how to please a new partner. But I shook off the anxiety. I was ready to move forward, even if it would be awkward at first. With a bottle of wine, a bouquet of flowers, and a stuffed bear for Mia, I headed to Missy's house. I figured it wouldn't hurt to win her daughter over too. When Missy opened the door, I was struck by how beautiful she looked. Her fiery red curls framed her face, and her sundress, just above her knees, showed off her long legs. She was barefoot, her toes painted bright pink. "Do I pass the test?" she asked, her eyes twinkling with humor. "Absolutely," I said without hesitation. She laughed, then took the flowers and wine from me. "Mia's watching TV. Go say hi to her. I'm sure she'll love the bear." As Missy went to the kitchen, I knelt down next to Mia. "Hey there, sweetie, I brought you a bear." Mia hesitated for a moment, then smiled and grabbed the bear, running off to show Missy. The whole scene reminded me of when my own daughters were that age, and a wave of nostalgia hit me hard. "Are you okay?" Missy asked, noticing the wistful look on my face. I forced a smile. "Just thinking about my daughters when they were little." "Is it really that bad?" she asked softly. "They won't talk to me. Kathy's turned them against me, but I'm not giving up. I leave them messages every day," I explained. "I'm really sorry, Bill," Missy said quietly. "I know it's tough, but I also know they listen to my messages. I told them about our dinner plans, and Katie texted me saying, I'm an a-hole for moving on so fast." "Sorry, is that too fast?" I joked. Missy bit her lip, looking cute and unsure. "Maybe, but I'd be happy to figure it out with you." She smiled and took my hand. Dinner's ready. Hope you like pasta with meat sauce. Sounds perfect, I said, grinning. I also brought garlic bread, so get ready for some serious couch time later. Mia giggled, and I was surprised by how relaxed and open Missy had become. She caught my awkward expression and said, Bill, we're both adults here. I like you, and I'm not shy about it. You're a great guy, and I think it's worth giving us a shot. You think I'm hot stuff? I asked, still processing the shift in our conversation. Yep, she said with a playful glint in her eyes. You've been causing quite a stir at the store. You're good-looking, in shape, and smart, and we all know how you feel about loyalty. I sat there, feeling better than I had in a long time. So, I'm getting in line early, she added with a wink. I squeezed her hand. I like you too. Mia, noticing that she wasn't the center of attention anymore, piped up, Sketty's my favorite. I love Sketty too, I said with a smile. The fattier, the better. I spotted the Parmesan on the table. You must have really stinky cheese. She laughed. It's not stinky, it's parm. Stinky cheese, I teased, sniffing it dramatically. Wow, this is really stinky. Missy shook her head as I handed the jar to Mia. She sniffed it, shrugged, and then poured it over her pasta. We kept things light, chatting about Mia's preschool and her little circle of friends. Mia had a lot of stories to share, and I enjoyed every second of it. Eventually, Missy became quieter, just watching Mia and me talk. As the evening wore on, she started cleaning up, and I offered to help. No need, Missy laughed. She hasn't told you about her favorite TV shows yet. After getting Mia settled for the night, Missy joined me on the couch with a glass of wine. She leaned back, sighing contentedly, and propped her feet up. I love being a mom, she said, her voice soft. But sometimes this right here is the best part of my day. Without thinking, I wrapped my arm around her as she relaxed into me. It's harder with two, I said, thinking of my own experience with the girls. Definitely, she agreed with a knowing smile. After a moment of silence, I asked, Do you think your girls will ever come around? I hope so, Missy said thoughtfully. It's still new for them. I'm doing my best, but I know it'll take time. She kissed my cheek, her touch gentle. You're a great father, Bill. Don't give up on them. She set her glass down, her expression turning serious. Bill, I've already told you how I feel. I'm not one for games. I want us to keep seeing each other, and that includes being exclusive. I have Mia to think about, and she needs a solid father figure in her life. I need a partner, someone steady. I opened my mouth to respond, but she held up her hand. I know what you're going to say. Usually this conversation scares the guy off. But I don't think you're that kind of man. I'm giving you the chance to back out. If you're just looking to date around, I'm not your girl. But if you're serious, then I'm here. Wow, I said, surprised. Was that a rehearsed speech? Missy's expression faltered, and I thought for a moment that she might think I was rejecting her. Missy, I said quickly, we've known each other for years. The last few weeks have been great. I'm a family guy, always have been. I don't really know how to be single, and honestly, the idea of dating again scares the hell out of me. If Kathy had been faithful, I'd still be married. I'm not looking for something casual. She smiled and squeezed my hand. You're a good man, Bill. Smart, funny, and you make the best spaghetti I've ever had. She laughed, giving me a playful shove. I'd like to be your girlfriend. Let's make something real out of this, for both of us, and for Mia. That night, we didn't sleep together. As tempting as it was, I felt it was better to take things slow. Missy had pretty much laid her feelings on the line, and I wanted to respect that. A few days later, I got a break when a guy applied for a managerial position at the store. I didn't know his name, but I immediately recognized him as the man who'd played a part in ruining my marriage. He was interviewing for the night manager position, and I told Ann to hire him on the spot. On his second night, I was waiting in the parking lot when he arrived for his shift. I slipped a 40-inch TV into the back of his car, a model I knew we had in stock at the store. The next morning, I timed it so I could catch him when his shift ended. I casually walked him to his car, asking about his team, when I noticed the TV in the back seat. Jeff, I said, feigning surprise, did you buy that TV before your shift? We're not even open yet. No, Bill, that's not mine, he stammered, looking flustered. I don't know how it got there. We need to head back to the store, I said calmly. He tried to insist on checking the security footage, so I played along and took him to the security room. I'd already disabled the cameras, and when he saw the system was down, he panicked. I called the cops, and though he was convicted of a misdemeanor, he didn't serve jail time. He got community service and had to pay a fine, which was more than I'd spent on the TV. The company stepped up security after that, but Jeff never figured out I was behind it all. A week later, Missy and I were standing outside my office. When I pulled up, she greeted me with a kiss. "Are we still on for dinner tonight?" she asked, her voice warm. "Definitely," I replied. "I'm making something special." Just then, Katie's voice came from behind us. "Is that the tramp?" I turned around, surprised. "Excuse me." Missy remained calm, facing Katie. "Katie, what do you want?" Katie crossed her arms, frowning. "I've been trying to call you. Did you block my number?" Missy's tone turned sharp. "Yes, after your 30 messages calling me an a-hole for living my life. What do you want?" "I need to talk about the girls and their college plans," Katie said, her expression softening just slightly. "They can go wherever they want. I've already set aside the money for them," I said flatly. "I'd like to be involved, but since you've poisoned them against me, they won't even talk to me," Katie said, her voice rising. "They're just worried you won't pay for their tuition," I said, keeping my cool. "Of course I will. I still love them, despite everything," Katie insisted. "Because you can't keep your legs closed," I shot back. "I lost them in the divorce," Katie retorted. Missy couldn't hold back a laugh, but Katie shot her a glare. "It was one mistake," Katie said, trying to justify herself. "One mistake? You destroyed my family," I said coldly. "You should still be my husband," Katie argued. "Delusional," I muttered. "You ruined everything. If I find out you're seeing anyone else, I'll make sure he knows exactly what kind of woman you are." Katie yelled something as I walked away. Missy had shoved her up against the car, jabbing her finger in Katie's face. "Stay away from my man, witch. You tossed him aside, and I picked him up." I rushed over to pull Missy off her, putting a stop to it. "Let it go, Missy. She's not worth it." Katie was shouting insults as I walked away. "Please, Katie, just go away. It's over, and it's your fault." I left her there, sobbing, and caught up with Missy, who was breathing heavily. She apologized, but I couldn't resist teasing her a bit. "I have to admit, I like it when women fight over me," I grinned. "Does wonders for my ego." We laughed and went inside. Later that night, I got a call from my mom. She barely spoke before the line cut off. I tried calling back, but there was no answer. A quick call to emergency confirmed that paramedics were already on their way. Without thinking, I bolted from the store, telling Anne to cover for me. Missy called after me, but I didn't stop to explain. I ran straight to my car. By the time I reached my mom's house, the ambulance was already leaving. I followed it to the hospital, but when I got to the emergency room, I found out she had passed before they even arrived. She must have fainted while we were on the phone. I sat alone in the waiting room, tears streaming down my face, thinking about the last conversation we had. What was she trying to say? Was it, am I in trouble? Am I having a heart attack? I'll never know. My phone rang. It was Missy. "Hey," I said quietly. "My mom just died." "Oh, Bill, I'm so sorry," Missy replied softly. "Yeah, thanks," I said, my voice thick. "I don't think I'll be great company tonight." "No, I'm coming to you. You need me, Bill. Let me come, please." I didn't want to be alone. "Okay," I agreed. "I'll be home soon. I'll see you when you get here." After hanging up, I got in my car. Instead of heading straight home, I drove to my old house. I had to tell the girls whether they wanted to see me or not. As I pulled up, I saw both their cars in the driveway. My stomach sank. I never thought the first thing I'd have to tell them would be something like this. I didn't care that I didn't live there anymore. I entered the code for the garage and stepped inside. Kathy's car wasn't there, and that was a relief. I wasn't sure I was ready to face her in that moment. The house was quiet. I went upstairs and found the girls' rooms. "Daddy!" Jill called as I walked in. "What do you want?" Jenny shouted from behind her. "Did you come to beg?" Jenny added with a sneer. "Well, you can go to hell," I said, cutting her off. "Grandma had a heart attack and died this morning." Both girls froze, their faces filled with shock. "I just thought you should hear this from me," I added. "Now I'm going to hell," I muttered as I turned and walked out. Jenny yelled after me, but I didn't stop. I went straight to my car and drove away. I ended up at the small lake where I used to spend so much time with the girls. The air was cold and the water was just beginning to thaw, perfectly still. I sat on a bench and cried, not just for my mom, but for the distance that had grown between me and my daughters. Jenny's anger echoed in my mind. It was clear she didn't want me in her life. I couldn't help but wonder if I had made a mistake somewhere along the way. What had I done to make them hate me so much? Katie was the one who had destroyed our marriage. Why couldn't they see that? I don't know how long I sat there, but then I heard footsteps. I turned and saw Katie and the girls approaching. "How did you find me here?" I asked, staring at the water. "You didn't turn off the Find My Phone app," Kathy said. "Bill, I'm really sorry about your mom." "Yeah, well," I spat. "Do you regret her end? Or the fact that you turned her against me and she died without making up with me?" She didn't respond. "Leave me alone. I can't deal with you right now," I said. "I'll never forgive you for what you did to me. The last time we talked, she told me she wouldn't speak to me again until I backed out of the divorce. She didn't even say she loved me when she hung up." "I'm so sorry, Bill, for everything," Kathy said, her voice soft. I heard her walk away, and then Jenny spoke. "Dad, we're sorry too. Please forgive us for being witches." I turned around, and both girls rushed to me, wrapping their arms around me. We cried together, a long, silent moment of grief and reconciliation. "It's not my fault, girls," I said, trying to make them understand. "Why can't you see that your mom is the reason we're not together?" "We're sorry, Dad," Jill said, her voice thick with emotion. "We just thought you should forgive her. She still loves you. It's so obvious." "Not enough to stay faithful," I replied, my voice bitter. "I'm sorry, girls. I'm really sorry," I added, holding them tighter. We embraced again, while Kathy watched from her car, parked in the distance. "Girls, I need you," I said, my heart heavy. "You'll be leaving for college soon, and I'm going to miss you so much. We've wasted so much time." "We get it, Daddy," Jenny said softly. "We're not going to shut you out anymore." Jill added, "I just wish Grandma had a chance to make things right." "Daddy, can we come with you?" Jenny asked. "We haven't seen your new house yet. Maybe we could grab some pizza?" "Sure," I said, smiling through my sadness. "Tell your mom and let's go." When we pulled into my driveway, I saw Missy's car. I'd completely forgotten she was coming over. "Looks like you're going to meet Missy," I told the girls. "Is she your girlfriend?" they asked in unison, making me laugh. "Yeah," I said. "I mean, we've only just started dating." "Look at you blush," Jenny teased, grinning. The girls jumped out of the car and ran to Missy's door, bombarding her with questions. I could tell Missy wasn't quite sure what to make of the situation. "Girls, give her a break," I said, laughing. "Let's carry her inside, and I'll introduce you all properly." They gave me quick kisses on the cheek and rushed off. I walked over to Missy, who looked surprised. "Sorry about all that," I said as she opened the door. She smiled warmly and kissed my cheek. "Your daughters?" "Come on," I said. "Let me properly introduce you." "I must look a mess," Missy said, glancing up at me. I laughed. "You look fine. They'll like you." "Jill, Jenny, this is Missy," I called to the girls. They both hugged Missy and, as usual, cheekily said, "You're super hot." Jill jumped up and said, "Good for you, Daddy." Missy laughed, and I was too stunned to say anything. "Let's take a quick tour of the house, then I need to handle some things for Grandma's funeral," I said. "Bill, I'll order the pizzas while you show them around," Missy offered. "Sounds perfect," I said. "You're reading my mind." "Oh," the girls said in unison, their eyes wide. I shook my head as Missy smiled. I decided to wait until the next morning to share the news about my mom. I'd write an obituary for the paper and post the funeral details on Facebook after visiting the funeral home the next day. After dinner, we spent hours telling Missy stories about my mom. The girls, in their mischievous way, added a few embarrassing stories about me to keep Missy entertained. "It wasn't my fault the pier was wet. I didn't mean to fall in the lake," I defended myself. Before long, I noticed the time. It was already 10 o'clock. "Girls, time's getting away from us," I said. "It's getting late." They frowned. "Can we stay the night?" "I don't have the guest room set up yet," I replied. "Okay, here's the deal," I said, trying to lighten the mood. "I'll pick you up in the morning and we'll go out for breakfast. But if you don't mind, I could really use your help sorting through Grandma's things." "Of course, Dad. We'll help however we can," they replied. "Thank you," I said, grateful for their support. "Missy, would you like to go for a ride or do you need to head back to Mia?" I asked. "She's with my parents tonight." Jill shot up from her seat. "Who's Mia?" "Mia is my 4-year-old daughter," I explained. Both of them squealed. "Oh my God, I can't wait to meet her," Jenny exclaimed. Missy laughed at their excitement. "I promise, soon." "Okay, let's go," I said. After we got back to my house, Missy and I sat on the couch. "They're great girls," Missy said, smiling. "I'm glad we're finally getting along," I replied with a sigh. I just wish it didn't take losing my mom to make it happen. Missy snuggled into me and I wrapped my arms around her. I fell asleep with her there, feeling the warmth of her embrace. When I woke up the next morning, Missy had covered us with a blanket, still curled up against me. I couldn't remember the last time I'd felt so close to someone. I kissed her forehead gently. "Sorry I fell asleep on you," I said softly. She mumbled, stretching. "It's fine, baby. You've had a long, emotional day." "Would you like to join me and the girls for breakfast?" I asked. "Only if I can bring Mia. My parents have plans this morning," she replied. "Of course my daughters will love her," I said, smiling. I texted the girls and asked them to meet us at IHOP. When I walked in, holding Mia's hand, the girls immediately rushed over to her. In no time, Mia was lifted into the air, twirling and laughing, surrounded by kisses. "I have to go to the bathroom," she squealed. The girls chorused, "We'll take her," and hurried off to the bathroom. "I don't know, Missy," I said with a grin. "Do you think they'll get along?" She playfully gave me a tap on the shoulder and kissed my cheek. "I hope it stays that way for years to come," she said. It was a little unnerving to hear her say that, considering we'd only been on one official date, but I had to admit, I was starting to feel the same way. As we sat down to eat, Mia and the girls talked nonstop. Mia asked so many questions about their lives that even the girls seemed surprised by her curiosity. She wasn't just talking about herself. She genuinely wanted to know everything about them. The girls were pros at interacting with kids. They were neighborhood babysitters, after all. They knew all the best kids' shows and movies, and Mia was eating it all up. I noticed how quickly she bonded with Missy, too. There was no jealousy or hostility. Despite the rocky past with my daughters, they had warmed up to Missy almost immediately. They hadn't spoken to me for months after the divorce, yet they embraced Missy without hesitation. I didn't quite understand it, and I was going to have to ask the girls about it later. After making a few calls, sorting through my mom's things, and visiting the funeral home, I finally had a moment to relax. The girls came over for dinner, and Missy and Mia had left after breakfast to give us some space. Missy didn't want to be around during the emotional stuff at my mom's house. She thought it would be too hard for Mia with all the questions while we were still processing everything. "Daddy, are you in love with Missy?" Jenny suddenly asked, her tone serious. "We've only been out a few times," I said, trying to keep it light. "It's too soon to say that." Jill raised an eyebrow. "Okay, Dad. You ever seen those cartoons where the girl looks at her prince with hearts floating around?" I nodded, chuckling as I bit into my pizza. "Well, she looks at you like that," Jill said, "like she's got hearts in her head." Before I could respond, both girls looked at me and said in unison, "We like her." I went from amused to frustrated. I tossed my pizza slice back on my plate, wiped my hands, and walked to the sink to collect myself. "Daddy," Jenny said softly, "how can you break my heart all this time, then tell me you like her? What did I do to make you shut me out, to ignore me, and tell me to go to hell when I needed you? How many times did I cry over messages you didn't care to hear?" Jill spoke quietly. "Mom made us—" "What?" I asked, stunned. "It started when Mom said, 'If you want to be a family again, come back to me. We're sorry.'" The words hit me like a punch. I turned around and saw a tear on Jenny's cheek, and she rushed to hug me. "Dad, we're sorry," she whispered. "When it didn't work, Mom told us you left us and wouldn't pay for college. She said your messages were just a way to look good in the divorce," Jill explained. "And you believed that?" I asked, my voice thick with disbelief. "How could we not?" Jill said softly. "We thought you were being unreasonable." "What about me?" I asked. "Would you let your boyfriend cheat on you?" They didn't answer. "Where do we draw the line?" I asked firmly. They both started crying, and we embraced again. The weight of it lifted, and I felt anger, sorrow, and relief. "I'm sorry, girls," I whispered, holding them tight. "I missed you so much." After a while, I said, "Time to go home. You've got school tomorrow. Don't forget to tell Mom about the wake and funeral." We hugged one last time before they left. Watching them drive off, I looked up at the sky and whispered, "You didn't have to go, Mom. But thanks for bringing them back to me. I'll miss you." The wake was tough, especially since I've always felt awkward around bodies. Mom looked peaceful, and part of me was relieved she'd be with Dad again. He had passed away a few years ago and didn't want a traditional wake. He thought it was weird for people to gather around a corpse. Mom had planned everything, even picking out her own casket. I was by the front when Katie and my girls arrived. They gave me warm, tear-filled hugs. Katie stayed back, giving me space. After the prayer, Kathy placed something in the casket, a photo of the three of us with Kathy holding Mom and our babies in her arms. It made me tear up. I gently placed it next to her hands and lost it for the first time that day. Later, the priest began the prayer service, and Kathy stayed at the back, talking to everyone. You can't be part of a family for as long as she was without forming bonds. The immediate family was supposed to sit in the front row. My girls were on my right, Missy on my left, but something felt off. I looked around and saw Katie standing in the back, wiping her eyes. It didn't feel right. Mom would have wanted Kathy up front too. She was like a daughter to her. I walked to the back of the room and people followed me. I held out my hand to Katie. Come here. You don't need to stay back there. Katie sobbed and hugged me. Thank you, she whispered. We went to the front where Uncle John gave her his seat. Missy kissed my cheek. You're a good man, Bill, she whispered. It felt strange holding Missy's hand with Kathy only a few feet away, but I hoped I wouldn't regret it. Later, as I said goodbye to the last guests, Kathy approached with Missy beside me. I wondered how Katie would react. I hoped there wouldn't be any tension. Bill, thank you for letting me be part of today, Kathy said. She loved you like a daughter. It was the right thing to do. I offered Kathy a ride in the limo the next day. She hugged me and cried. I felt Missy's hand on my waist, fearing tension. Katie, breaking the hug, said, If you don't want anything from me, I'll go home. She smiled briefly at Missy. I'm glad you're here for him. You may not know it, but he was a mama's boy. It's going to be really hard on him without her. With that, she left the room. Missy hugged me. Let's get you home. Back at the house, Missy sat at the table with a cold beer. Things with Kathy went better than expected. I was worried she'd start something with you, I said, relieved. Well, the girls helped with that. We just need to get through tomorrow. I hoped she was right. I don't know why I was so uneasy about Katie. Maybe I'm paranoid. Will you stay the night with me? I asked. She smiled, took my hand, and said, You couldn't kick me out if you tried. We didn't make love, but having her spoon with me was the best sleep I'd had since the divorce. As we waited for prayer to begin, Kathy whispered, I'm not going to cause trouble. I know, I lied. I'm just uncomfortable. She scoffed. How do you think I feel? I'm an outcast here. No one thinks that about you, I said, trying to reassure her. Jean, my mom's friend, patted me on the shoulder. Your mom was wonderful. We'll all miss her. After the funeral, we went to my mom's favorite Polish restaurant. Kathy seemed uncomfortable, searching for a seat. I led her to the table where Missy and the girls were sitting. Kathy, you'll always be family. No matter the divorce, you're welcome here. She thanked me, and a tear rolled down her cheek. I'm not sure when I got over the pain Kathy caused, but eventually, I did. Life went on. The girls went to college and Skype with me every week. Missy and I are still together, and I'm close to proposing. Katie and I still talk occasionally, but we're on good terms. She's dating a nice guy, and I hope things work out. Some may think I should have forgiven Kathy, but I just couldn't. Maybe I'm the bad guy, but I can live with that.
I met Agnes in the 9th grade, started dating her, and we were pretty much an established couple from the 10th grade on. We had no problems all the way through high school, and cliché of all clichés, we exchanged our cleanest the night of the senior prom. After uncovering the realm of closeness, we embraced every opportunity. Marriage discussions had been ongoing since the 11th grade, and we had made the decision to wait until college completion before officially getting married. College brought about a transformation in Aggie. In high school, our peers acknowledged our relationship, ensuring that Aggie was left undisturbed by the guys. However, this dynamic changed when we entered college. Although some familiar faces from high school were present, the majority of students came from different places. In this new environment, the guys no longer saw Aggie as exclusively mine. Instead, they perceived her as a desirable female, subject to constant attention. I was aware of the situation, but there wasn't much I could do. With different majors and classes, our interactions were limited to the evenings after classes and after I finished work. The attention had an impact on Aggie, making her more flirty. I observed her walking, smiling and talking with other guys several times, but being on the other side of the quad, she didn't notice me. Twice, while taking a shortcut through the student union, I spotted Aggie in the cafeteria with a guy and once with two of them. It only dawned on me much later that I never saw her with other girls. It was always with guys. Nevertheless, it didn't worry me. After all, we were a couple in love, planning to get married, so there was nothing for me to fret about. She was an attractive girl, naturally drawing attention from guys. But she was mine, proving it every night when we were together, for years. Later, after graduating, finding jobs in our respective fields, getting married, and starting a life of wedded bliss, I enjoyed almost 6 years of contentment before a sudden revelation shook me awake. While at my desk, Molly from the mailroom placed some files in my basket. As I examined the top one, I wondered why it had been routed to me, given that it concerned an account handled by Wally Bergman, an old classmate from high school and college. Midway through, I discovered a major error, realizing the projections were off by almost $3 million. As I reached for my calculator, Wally rushed into my office, urgently seeking the file for a presentation to Apex. I showed him the error, and he appeared visibly concerned about the mistake. He expressed the urgency of revising it swiftly to avoid any potential consequences. Subsequently, he took the file and left hastily to make the necessary adjustments. It was Thursday, and Aggie always worked late to finalize payroll for the Friday payday. Following my routine, I visited Bud's bar after work for his half-pound ground round and a couple of beers before heading home. Completing my burger and starting my second beer, Wally entered, spotted me, and joined me in my booth. He ordered a beer from Sue and asked her to bring me the bill, mentioning it was a gesture of gratitude for helping him preserve his job earlier that day. I accepted without argument, considering it wasn't a substantial amount. We talked about work, covering various subjects such as whether we had seen certain individuals or heard about recent events. Then, Wally brought up a delicate matter. He expressed his view that I was a nice person and questioned why I tolerated Aggie's behavior. I was confused and told him I didn't understand what he meant. He persisted, asking why I allowed Aggie to behave the way she did. My puzzled response prompted him to realize that I was unaware of something significant. As he attempted to leave, I stopped him and insisted that he stay. I urged him not to leave after dropping such a bombshell. I asked him to sit back down and explain further. Wally complied, expressing his uncertainty and shock that I hadn't been aware of the situation for the past 10 years. When I asked him what he meant, he revealed that Aggie had a questionable reputation. I was too stunned to respond. Wally apologized, regretting that he had brought it up. However, I insisted that he continue and provide more details. He admitted to knowing about Aggie's behavior since high school and confessed his involvement with her. Shocked by this revelation, I insisted that he tell me everything from the beginning without leaving out any details. The unfolding story shocked me, not just the content, but the realization that it had been happening for over 10 years without my knowledge. 2 weeks after senior prom, Wally walked into his cousin George's house, finding George and Aggie together. They both saw him, and since neither objected, he undressed and waited his turn. They took turns until Aggie stopped and said she had to clean up before meeting me after my part-time job at Jessup's Market. Wally and George continued their encounters whenever I was at work. After George got serious with Melody Martin, Aggie was involved with Wally for a while. Then, finding her with Mike Bella and Justin Walsh, Wally joined in. The three of them continued until she had to stop for our meeting. Wally shared her with several others, and she had participated in group encounters with more than a half-dozen guys. I recognized that we were friends, but we weren't exactly best friends, you know? Remember the age of 18, when hormones were raging? You and Aggie were somewhat steady, but I didn't believe your relationship was that serious. I mean, if it were, would she be involved with anyone who showed interest? College didn't change that pattern. In the first semester as a freshman, Aggie had classes Monday through Thursday and Tuesday through Friday, with no classes on Wednesday. Her last class on weekdays ended at 2 or 1. I can't recall your schedule, but when you finished class, you went to work. When Aggie finished class, she headed to a bedroom somewhere. Wednesday turned into an all-day event throughout our school years. While class schedules varied, the constant was Aggie engaging after class until you finished work. I might be making it sound like an everyday occurrence, but it wasn't. 2 or 3 times a week, although most of us were surprised when you and Aggie got married, assuming you must have known what she had been doing. Yet you married her anyway. Some thought maybe you were into the idea of your women being with other men. Tyler speculated that perhaps you and Aggie were debauchees, but no one remembered seeing you with another girl. However, Aggie was frequently seen with other guys. I had no clue, Wally, not even a hint. Damn, Rob, I hate to be the one to inform you, but if you never knew, it stands to reason you probably don't know about her Thursday night date with Bob and Bill Howard. On the Tuesdays you bowl, she sees Mark Willard. I'm not sure who else she sees or when, but it's a sure bet that whenever you're off doing something, so is Aggie. It may not matter much, but I stopped being involved with her when you got married. A single woman is one thing, but messing around with a married woman is a whole different situation. I'm not sure what to say, Wally, and I don't know what I'm going to do, but I'm definitely going to take some action. I finished my beer, stood up to leave, and turned to Wally. Thanks, Wally. Thanks for the burger, the beer, and for helping me gain clarity as I drove home. As I pondered Wally's revelations, I questioned whether to believe him. On one hand, I thought, no way. Aggie loves me, and she wouldn't betray me. On the other hand, why would Wally lie to me? I had to finally admit to myself that he wouldn't. He knew I'd verify what he told me, and if he had lied, how could we continue working together? The answer was, we couldn't, and Wally knew it. Working with him, aware of him and Aggie, would be challenging, but we'd eventually overcome it. I remembered the teenage years with hormones running high. If some other guy's girl offered back then, and I didn't have Aggie, I might have taken it. The real question now was, what the hell do I do, Rob? I didn't know that Aggie and I were finished. I might have managed a one-night drunken mistake, or maybe even a short-term affair, if Aggie could convince me it wouldn't happen again. But outright betrayal for 10 years? No way. I was lying in bed, pretending to be asleep as Aggie returned from handling the payroll. I ignored her touch when she reached out, as she wanted to give me leftovers, but I wasn't interested. Admittedly, I'd been receiving them for years without damage, but I didn't know that then. I do now. Her hand on my body made my skin crawl, and for the first time, I didn't get aroused when Aggie touched me. I was already up before Aggie the next morning, with coffee brewing and the morning paper in hand. Aggie asked what happened the previous night since she came home eager, and I was already in bed. Wally remarked that my behavior was unusual. I explained that I felt unwell because something I ate disagreed with me, so I decided to go to bed early. Aggie expressed hope for my recovery and mentioned I'd have to double duty tonight to make up for the missed night. Upon arriving at work, I immediately dialed Felix Mather, an old high school friend now practicing corporate law, though I wasn't quite sure what that entailed. I asked him for recommendations for an assertive divorce lawyer. He replied negatively, indicating that my request meant my hopeful assumption was incorrect. Discovering that I was looking for a divorce lawyer suggested that I had learned the truth about Aggie. He then questioned if I believed we had an open marriage, assuming that was the only way Aggie could engage in such behavior and still remain with me. Surprisingly, Felix, I had no idea about her actions until yesterday. After a brief pause, Felix suggested that I contact Tom Sweet and mention his referral. Accordingly, I followed Felix's advice and called Sweet, informing him about Felix's recommendation. He informed me he could meet later that day if I could be there by 1. I assured him I could, and indeed I did. Sweet informed me that I had various choices, ranging from a friendly separation to a scorched earth policy reminiscent of Attila the Hun. In our state, which was not a no-fault state, infidelity constituted valid grounds for divorce. However, obtaining a divorce based on infidelity required concrete and undeniable evidence. Mere hearsay wouldn't suffice. I inquired about how to gather the necessary evidence, to which Sweet responded by taking a card from his desk and passing it to me. The card belonged to Gaston Marshall, a private investigator whose office was conveniently located across the street. Sweet offered to contact Marshall to check if he could accommodate me promptly. I requested him to proceed, expressing my desire to conclude the process as quickly as possible. I also instructed him to start the divorce paperwork, promising to provide the evidence once I obtained it. Sweet made the call, and within 10 minutes, Gaston Marshall outlined our course of action. Unfortunately, one of the requirements was for me to act completely natural around Aggie, avoiding any suspicion that I was aware of the impending divorce. As unpleasant as it may be, Marshall advised, maintain your routine without changes. If you usually engage in lovemaking activities 3 or 4 times a week, continue to do so. Whether you typically initiate or not, keep it up. Just remember, it's no longer about making love. It's about fulfilling a physical need. Don't do anything that might disrupt her routine. It's crucial for our plan that she remains unaware of any changes in your relationship. I returned to my office, summoned my courage, and called Aggie. At work, it was our routine to dine out every Friday night and have breakfast every Sunday morning. So when I reached her on the phone, I suggested Tricochis for dinner, and she agreed. While I enjoyed my veal, Marcella and Aggie worked on her rigatoni, sipping white wine. Marshall Investigations employees were discreetly installing wireless cameras and listening devices in our house. Sipping my Merlot, I recalled Marshall's advice. It's natural to want to spot hidden cameras, but resist the urge. If she catches you, our efforts could be wasted. Also, force yourself to act natural in the bedroom, challenging unless you're a born exhibitionist. The system is sound and motion activated. You'll be on camera, knowing some employees may see you. Don't let it inhibit you. Although there's a switch to turn off the system at home, most forget to turn it back on when leaving. My advice, leave the system alone and pretend you're a confident star at work. After dinner, while making a private video, I suggested drinks and maybe some dancing to Aggie. She declined, insisting we head home for me to make up for letting her down the previous night. On the way home, she slid over, unzipped my pants, and cautioned, "Drive carefully, sweetie. Don't hit anything that might make me bite off your meat." In my mind, what she was doing wasn't unique for me, but something she had done with 100 other men over the last 10 years. Despite my disgust with Aggie, human nature took over a couple of minutes into the act, and my body responded, wanting her to continue and bring me to completion. Soon after, I pulled into our driveway, and Aggie urged me to hurry up to the bedroom. I couldn't adhere to Marshall's advice. There was no way I could act natural, knowing I might be performing for an audience. Trying to appear natural while being lovemaking with Aggie was going to be a challenge. So, I went to where I was told the switch would be and turned the system off. Leaving my cell phone on the car seat, I knew it would remind me to reactivate the system when I saw it upon leaving the house. I don't know if it registered with Aggie, but that night, it wasn't making love. It was just going through the motions. Unfortunately, once wasn't enough, and I had to perform 2 more times before Aggie let me sleep. The next morning, dressed for my run, Aggie reminded me she wouldn't be home when I returned, attributing it to a lengthy hair appointment from 9 a.m. to 2 p.m. Aggie mentioned gossiping with other regulars and usually going to lunch with them. It could even be the truth. But after what I'd recently found out, I thought she probably met one of her extramarital partners either before or after getting her hair done. On my way out, I switched the system back on. I doubted anything would happen during my run, but I needed to form the habit of ensuring the system was active when I wasn't home. The switch only deactivated the cameras. The listening devices and phone tap were always on. After my usual 5 miles, returning home, I went down into the basement and opened the cabinet above my workbench. It's where I told Marshall to place the recorders. 2 receivers were inside, one for listening devices and the phone tap, the other a DVD recorder receiving input from the wireless cameras. Confirming my suspicions, I heard a recorded conversation. "Hello? Good morning, lover. Are we still on for today?" "You bet. The wife took the kids to the zoo, so we have until 6 tonight. You know I can't stay that long. I need to be home by 2. Any later and it might get Rob to wondering. He has already questioned the fact that I don't get home until 2. Then skip the hair job and get over here so we can make it happen." "Yeah, sure. Then what do I tell Rob when he asks why I've been gone so long and my hair hasn't been done?" "I want more time with you 2, baby, but we have to settle for what we can get." I recognized the man's voice. It was my cousin Lou. I was furious when I went back upstairs, wondering how many other relatives she had been involved with. I managed to control my anger by the time Aggie returned from her hair appointment. An hour later, I faked a fall down the basement stairs, telling Aggie I'd hurt my back. Must have pulled a muscle or something. This conveniently excused me from being lovemaking with her for the next couple of days at least. On Monday, I phoned Aggie at work and informed her that I would be leaving town on Tuesday, returning by Friday to take her out to dinner. Although there was no actual trip planned, I didn't view it as 3 wasted days. On average, I traveled once a month, and Aggie was consistently home during my nightly check and phone call. Since my calls occurred at irregular times, ranging from 7 to 10, I doubted she waited for them before going out. If she were cheating, as I'd been led to believe, she might be doing it on our bed while I spoke to her. That was my hope. If she was, and the cameras captured it, I'd have the irrefutable proof my attorney needed for the divorce action. That evening, Aggie desired closeness, stating, "I need something to hold me for the 3 nights you will be gone." Yeah, right. Fortunately, my back was still hurting, so I had to decline. On Tuesday morning, Aggie bid me farewell with a kiss and suitcase in hand. I left for my supposed business trip, working almost a full day before leaving at 3. I drove to our neighborhood, parked a block from the house, and using my laptop, entered a code Marshall had given me to activate the software he loaded onto my computer. A few keystrokes, and I was listening to the phone line recorder. "Hello? Hey, handsome honk, it's me. What's up? Hubby just left on a 3-day trip. You ready to spend 3 fun-filled nights with me? Does a duck walk barefoot on the beach? I'll take that as a yes. I leave it to you to call Tony. I've got to get out of here and get to work. I'll be home by 6. See you then." After shutting down the computer, I called Tom Sweet and instructed him to have the papers ready for service by Thursday, detailing how I wanted it done. He informed me that my preferred method would cost more than the standard service fee, to which I replied that I didn't care. Leaving the neighborhood, I drove to the other side of town and checked into a motel with a restaurant and a bar next door, settling in for a 3-day stay. I enjoyed the bar, my kind of place, bringing a big smile to my face each time I visited. Apologies to Toby Keith. It was a country western bar with a jukebox loaded with good tunes for dancing. Every night, I saw 3 or 4 unattached ladies who couldn't bear to see a man sitting alone while there was music to dance to. During my first visit, while sitting at the bar nursing a long neck, a great-looking redhead approached and said, "Come on, sugar, they're playing our song." She took my hand, pulled me off the bar stool, and led me onto the dance floor. As we waltzed, she clarified, "Don't get the wrong idea, sugar. I'm not tallying. I just love the dance. And you were there." Her name was Rhonda, and after the dance, she invited me to join her and her 2 friends, Laura and Shelby, at their table. I spent until 10:30 taking turns dancing with them, then informed them I had to call it a night. "Maybe we will see you again," Rhonda said. "We are in here 2 or 3 nights a week. I'm just next door in the motel, so it is likely that I will be in here the next 2 nights. I went to bed feeling positive for the first time since my conversation with Wally. The following afternoon at 3, I parked a block away from the house and reviewed the footage captured by the wireless cameras the previous night. The 2 men who joined Aggie in the bedroom were notably younger, at least 6 years her junior, and I wondered if Aggie was seeking youthful exuberance. The content was unremarkable, involving straightforward lovemaking activities. While the visual of Aggie with 2 men didn't particularly interest me, I was intrigued by the audio. I was surprised by what I heard, or rather, what I didn't hear. I expected Aggie to ridicule my lovemaking skills, but she never did. Wednesday was uneventful, with my presence only acknowledged when one of the men expressed a wish for more frequent meetings. Aggie clarified that I had priority for her time. However, I overheard Aggie telling them to leave the house by 6 in the morning on both Wednesday and Thursday. She emphasized the importance of avoiding being seen by the neighbors, as none of them were early risers. They left precisely at 6, and I assumed the same would occur on Friday. I called my attorney and had him change the serving of the papers until Friday at 5:45. Friday morning, I parked just down the street from the house at 5:55. When the front door opened, the 2 men came out. They turned to say goodbye to Aggie, who was standing just inside the door. And that is when they saw the man standing just off to the side. He stepped in front of the open door, served Aggie, and then turned and walked away, leaving Aggie and her 2 companions looking at his back. I pulled up in front of the house and honked the horn to make sure that I had Aggie's attention, and then I waved bye-bye and drove off. The papers served on Aggie were a letter from me to her. Basically, it said that I never wanted to speak to her again unless in the presence of our attorneys. I didn't want to know why. I didn't want to hear that she loved only me, and it was just meaningless closeness with the others. I didn't want to hear that it wasn't what I thought it was, and I didn't want to hear that we could get by it because of our love for each other. I did not want to hear any of the excuses cheaters come up with when caught. Of course, Aggie paid no attention to the letter, and 15 minutes after I had pulled away from the house, my cell rang, and it was Aggie. I let it go to voicemail, along with the next 7 calls from her. When I got to work, I told my secretary that I had left Aggie and not to put through any calls from her. I had another thought as I was opening my office door, and I turned back to her. Another thing, Martha. If she shows up here, please tell her that I'm not here. Tell her I've gone to meet with a customer. Martha stuck her head in the door. 5 minutes later, I talked to Iris on the front desk. If your wife shows up, she will call me and stall her to give you time to get out the side door. You can go to the cafe and have coffee until she leaves. I thanked her, and as she went back to her desk, I thought, and not for the first time, that a good secretary is a priceless thing to have. Aggie called me 17 times that day, and I ignored all the calls. At lunchtime, I phoned my dad and brother, updating them on the situation. I instructed Dad to inform Mom and asked her not to persuade me to reconcile with Aggie. He mentioned it would be challenging, since Mom viewed Aggie as the daughter she never had. By the day's end, I still had some pending work. Since there was no rush to go home, I opted to stay and finish it by 5. Martha informed me before leaving. By the way, your wife called 5 times before noon, and each time I told her I had instructions not to put her through to you. I think she finally got the message since she hasn't called since I finished around 7. Upon reaching the lobby, Iris was gone. Hank, our night watchman, saw me and commented, "Hot time on the town tonight with the missus. Why would you think that she is out there waiting on you?" I clarified, "We are getting a divorce, Hank, and she wants to talk, and I don't." I instructed him not to open the door if she knocked, and if she used the intercom, to say he was alone in the building. I added that my car was in the lot due to a breakdown, and a tow truck would arrive in the morning. Hank assured me he could handle it, expressing sympathy for the situation, and sharing he had been through 2 divorces. Exiting through the back door, I circled the block, crossed the street, and walked down the alley to Dave's Diner, entering and taking a seat. I positioned myself to observe Aggie waiting by my car, ordered the special, and kept an eye on her while eating. Halfway through dessert, she approached the building and pressed the call button on the intercom. Apparently, Hank conveyed my message as she returned to her car and left. After finishing dessert and having one more cup of coffee, I departed. I briefly stopped in the bar for a couple of beers. Despite a few ladies there alone, hoping for a dance partner, I had my 2 beers and left. Saturday morning proved busy as I attended to tasks I should have completed before serving Aggie. I just hoped I wasn't too late, and she hadn't taken action on what I should have done. I went to the bank and emptied all the accounts, retrieved my personal papers and certificates of deposit from the safe deposit box, leaving Aggie's belongings untouched. I removed my wedding ring, placing it in the box for her discovery. Afterward, I had breakfast at the Waffle House, using my cell phone to handle the credit cards. I canceled both joint cards, leaving me with a Visa and an American Express solely in my name. Aggie also had 2 cards in her name only. Thus, I ensured she couldn't run up joint cards with cash advances. After breakfast, I returned to the motel, parked my car, and called a cab to take me to the nearest Avis rental place. Renting the cheapest car available, I returned to the motel. I spent the afternoon lounging by the motel pool and reading a book. Just before dinner, I switched on my cell phone, finding 9 messages from Aggie. I cleared them and then turned the phone back off. For dinner, I had a light meal and then headed to the bar, which had a live band on Friday and Saturday, attracting a large crowd. Finding a seat at the bar, I ordered a beer. As I downed about half of it, I felt a tug on my shirt. Turning, I saw Rhonda. "Hey, cowboy, why are you sitting here when there is a seat at our table for you? To be honest, if I had seen you, I wouldn't have intruded on you. It would have seemed like I was taking things for granted." Nonsense, come on. I got up and followed her to her table, where Laura and Shelby were also present. I sat down, greeted the girls, and then commented, "There seems to be something wrong with this picture. 3 beautiful women sitting alone and you aren't swamped with guys. We get a lot of attention, but it is usually from idiots. They see us here, notice the wedding rings, and assume we're here to cheat. We're just here to dance, and only a couple of guys understand that and accept it. The rest think they are God's gift to women, and we have to fend them off after the other night. We know that you are one of the good guys, and you have an open invitation to join us whenever you come in, and we are here. It isn't any of my business, and I know that, so feel free to tell me that. But I have to ask, why are 3 gorgeous married women spending time in a place like this without your husbands?" "It is a legitimate question," Rhonda said. "Laura's husband is in the Army Reserve, and his unit was sent to Afghanistan. She was going nuts cooped up in her house alone, so we decided to get her out. Shelby's husband works afternoons, and my hubby is a long-haul trucker who is often away, so the 3 of us banded together to keep each other company. We love to dance, and here we are. What's your story? I noticed you had a ring on last time we saw you, and now it is gone." "I handed my wife divorce papers yesterday morning and left the ring where she'd find it. Does that mean you're free to pursue?" "Not at all. The grounds were infidelity, and I won't give her anything she could use against me in a countersuit," Laura remarked. "Great," she added. "We have a reliable dancing partner." The rest of the evening until closing, I danced with the 3 of them, occasionally sharing them with other guys. They agreed to meet on Sunday. I spent a quiet day by the pool with a book, and Monday I drove the rental car to work. I hoped Aggie wouldn't see my car, assuming I was out of town again and would stay away. The week passed with 6 to 10 calls daily from Aggie, which I never answered more than once. She called from unfamiliar numbers, but upon hearing her voice, I hung up. Each night after dinner, I stopped by the bar for a beer or 2. Rhonda, Laura, and Shelby were there on Wednesday and Friday, so I joined them, dancing until 10 on Wednesday and until closing on Friday. I figured by Saturday, Aggie would realize I wasn't going to talk to her, so I turned in my rental and drove my car to work on Monday. A mistake. Monday, she was parked next to my car when I left the building. Spotting me, she got out and stood by my car's driver's side door. She mentioned that we needed to talk, but I didn't respond. As I approached the car, she moved to block the door, insisting that I let her explain. I pushed her aside, causing her to stumble but regain her balance quickly. I rolled down the window and informed her that she needed to read the letter accompanying the divorce papers. I asserted that I wouldn't engage in any conversation without my attorney present, and that any discussion would strictly concern the divorce. Aggie expressed her unwillingness to divorce and her lack of desire for me. I reiterated that our relationship was over and that she needed to accept it because I wouldn't change my mind. After rolling up the window, I drove away, leaving her behind. Aggie's refusal to accept my decision became apparent when I left work on Tuesday. 2 men approached my car and grabbed my arms. I recognized them as the individuals who had been with Aggie in our bedroom. One of them warned me not to resist, stating that Aggie wanted to talk, and since I was being difficult, they would take me to her by any means necessary. Though only a few years older, they must have thought me soft due to my suit and briefcase. I figured I could handle them. They wouldn't expect an old guy to resist, so I could catch them off guard. Either way, the commotion would draw attention, and their kidnapping plan would fail. But then I pondered, do I truly desire this? If Aggie was willing to go to such lengths just to reach Octomy, what might she attempt next? If I sent these 2 back to her battered and bruised? They nudged me into my car, and I sat between them, a briefcase on my lap, as they drove to the house. They escorted me inside, and Aggie instructed them to seat me in a chair and ensure I remained there. She turned to me and announced that we wouldn't be getting a divorce. As I attempted to rise from the chair, the 2 men pushed me back down and restrained me. One of them warned me to stay still. Aggie declared that we would remain married, but that there would be changes in our lifestyle due to her medical issue, which I had discovered. She expressed regret that I had found out about it, but insisted that I had to accept it, now that I knew. She then confessed her love for me, asserting that she wouldn't let me go. She revealed that her medical issue was nymphomania, which she had suffered from since high school. Aggie attributed the onset of her condition to when I took her pureness. I dismissed her statement, suggesting that there were medications available to address her condition. She acknowledged that such medications existed, but explained that she had tried them all. She found them ineffective as they made her feel sluggish and dull, likening the experience to being a zombie. Despite this, she admitted that she enjoyed being a nymphomaniac and emphasized her love for closeness, asserting that she hardly ever left me alone. She argued that her actions didn't damage me and that she spoiled me. Aggie reasoned that since I couldn't maintain arousal constantly, she needed to seek it elsewhere, and assured me that she always returned to me because she loved me. She outlined her terms, explaining that she had drafted a post-nuptial agreement, allowing her to have as many lovers as necessary for her mental well-being. She proposed that I agree to leave the marriage with nothing if I later found the conditions unacceptable. In return, she asked what she would receive besides having a promiscuous wife. I responded by assuring her that she would continue to have the same loving wife she had for the past 6 years. I reminded her that she had considered those years perfect despite my actions, which were now causing an issue. I suggested that the only change was that my ego was now involved, as someone else was involved in something I had previously considered mine alone. I urged her to accept that our life would continue as it had for the last 6 years. Aggie emphasized that my inability to meet her physical needs didn't mean I wasn't man enough for her. She praised me as a fantastic lover who always left her completely satisfied. However, she acknowledged that I couldn't satisfy her as often as she needed. I addressed her by her full name, aware of her aversion to it. Reluctantly agreeing to sign the agreement with a few amendments, I voiced my concerns about our lack of closeness and expressed my need for her presence in our bed. Despite my plea and reassurance of my love for her, she seemed unwavering in her stance. With a heavy heart, I accepted her offer to make the necessary changes, hoping it might salvage some of our crumbling relationship. As I attempted to rise from my chair, the 2 men accompanying her obstructed my path, leaving me feeling trapped and powerless. When I mentioned needing to use the bathroom, one of them callously suggested I relieve myself where I sat, citing Aggie's directive to keep me seated until further notice. Aggie returned after 5 minutes, read the document aloud, and I asked where to sign. She offered a pen, but I mentioned her associates preventing me from standing and instructed them to stand. Rising, I approached her, placed my briefcase on the table, and took the pen. However, I decided to review it myself to ensure its contents matched her description. After reading it, I chuckled, tore it up, and tossed it back at her. I grabbed my briefcase and headed for the door. Aggie yelled to stop me, and her 2 associates pursued. As they neared, I swiftly turned toward them with my briefcase, targeting the first guy's head. It was a solid hit, sending him down. The second guy was taken off guard, and I punched him in the mouth, causing him to stagger backward. Then, I delivered a forceful kick to his groin, and he collapsed. Understanding the need to keep them subdued in a 2-against-1 scenario, I continued to strike both of them. I alternated between kicking them in sensitive areas and striking their ribs and head until Aggie screamed for me to stop or she'd shoot. Glancing at her, I noticed she was aiming a weapon at me. Defiantly, I challenged her to shoot. I retrieved my cell phone, dialed emergency, provided my name and address, and informed the operator of my wife's armed threat. The operator advised me to remain calm and not provoke her, ensuring help was on the way. After ending the call, I sarcastically thanked Agnes, suggesting her incarceration would expedite our divorce. She criticized my action as foolish. Agnes warned me that when the police arrived, I would be the one facing arrest. She accused me of entering and attacking her friends out of jealousy, stating that it would be my word against theirs and that they were fully clothed. I mocked her response, questioning her love for me. She assured me not to worry. I countered by stating that I would bail out and that Barry and Tony wouldn't press charges. I reminded Agnes that Hank and Joyce witnessed the 2 individuals picking me up from work and escorting me inside. I accused her of having me brought there against my will and hindering me when I tried to leave, despite her companion's failure. Then she pulled a weapon on me. I explained that although I might spend a night in jail, when my witnesses testified, she would be the one behind bars, and I wouldn't be posting her bail. I advised her that considering the situation, including kidnapping, false imprisonment, weapon threats, and likely other charges, her best course of action would be to stay silent. Aggie ignored my advice and, along with her associates, fabricated their stories. Consequently, I was taken into custody. The next morning, I called Tom Sweet, briefed him on the situation, and instructed him to collaborate with Gaston Marshall, obtain the evidence, and take appropriate action. Aggie realized she couldn't bail me out until I appeared before a judge, which wouldn't occur until Monday. Tom had a friend who worked as an assistant district attorney. He showed him the tapes of what happened at the house, which depicted Barry and Tony restraining me while Aggie aimed a weapon at me. The ADA overheard Aggie admitting she planned to lie and have her two accomplices do the same. When Aggie showed up at the courthouse for my bail hearing on Monday morning, she got arrested. Warrants were issued for Barry and Tony, and they were behind bars by nightfall. I refused to post bail for Aggie, and her parents couldn't come up with the money either. Aggie obtained a lawyer who contacted me and suggested a bail bondsman wanted me to use the house as collateral for her bond. I dismissed the suggestion and hung up. I checked out of the motel and moved back home, then had all the locks changed since Aggie had threatened me with a weapon. Tom managed to get a restraining order against Aggie in case she somehow got out of jail. She couldn't come within 1,000 feet of me without facing arrest and being sent back to jail. As tempting as it might have been to reconcile with Aggie, it wasn't worth risking serious jail time. Both Barry and Tony flipped on Aggie and took plea deals. Aggie claimed she never intended to shoot me. She was just trying to stop me from hurting Barry or Tony so badly that I'd end up in jail. The jury watched the tape, and based on Aggie's expressions of love for me, believed she was probably telling the truth about trying to prevent me from damaging Barry or Tony. They acquitted her of the felony menacing charge, but found her guilty of unlawful restraint and filing a false police report, along with a few minor charges. The judge sentenced her to 9 months in county jail and 1,000 hours of community service upon release. While she was in jail, the divorce proceedings wrapped up smoothly. Aside from losing Aggie, I only forfeited 20% of the equity in the house. I transferred the money to her bank account and headed to the bar next to the motel where I'd been staying. Luck was on my side. Rhonda and Shelby were there, so I invited them to celebrate my newfound freedom with me. Laura wasn't around because her husband had returned from deployment, and they were busy catching up. "Why celebrate with us?" Rhonda asked. "Well, I'm taking a wild guess here. I noticed Laura's wedding ring and Shelby's too, but you, Rhonda, aren't wearing a ring, and I don't see any signs you ever wore one, so I'm guessing there's no long-haul trucker in your life. Plus, I've always had a thing for gorgeous redheads." Shelby chuckled and teased, "Girl, you're busted," as I pulled Rhonda onto the dance floor.